to spin off all of its sports businesses, including the Rangers and Knicks. And Alibaba is said to seek as much as $15 billion in a Hong Kong listing. Wrapping things up, TripAdvisor was cut to underweight at JP Morgan after earnings, and Foot Locker was raised to positive over at Susquehanna. Live from the First Word Breaking News Desk, I'm Bailey Lipschultz. Karen?
Bailey, thank you. To hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, a career State Department official says President Donald Trump wanted to hear 3 words from the Ukraine president: investigations, Biden, and Clinton. That's according to the transcript released of an impeachment inquiry interview with career State Department official George Kent. He says that was his understanding of what it would take to unlock U.S. military aid to Ukraine. Jeff Sessions says that he'll run for the Alabama Senate seat that he vacated in 2017 to become President Trump's first U.S. Attorney General. In Thursday Night Football, the Raiders beat the Chargers 26-24. In the NBA, the Celtics won. In the NHL, the Rangers won. The Islanders and Devils lost. The Capitals were winners. Finally, from daybreak on the Bloomberg, Americans are getting older before they buy a home. Faced with higher prices and piles of student debt, the median age of first-time home buyers has risen to 33, the oldest in records dating back to 1981. Nathan, according to the National Association of Realtors, the median age of all buyers also hit a record, 47.
I see what you're trying to do here, Michael.
Yeah.
You're trying to goad me into making a joke about whose basement millennials are living in. We're above that here. I'm not going to do it.
Okay. Yes, sir. Global news, 24 hours a day. I got a ping pong table in the basement, on air, and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
With plenty of room for a fold-out couch. Thank you, Michael. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. We're at 6:50 on Wall Street. Time to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in our nation's capital include an impeachment transcript from State Department official George Kent saying the White House wanted to hear 3 words from Ukraine: impeachment, Biden, and Clinton. 2 White House aides reportedly clashing about how to respond to the impeachment probe. And President Trump heading to Georgia today to launch what's called a Black Voices for Trump coalition. Also making news, the latest subpoena in the House impeachment probe. Let's get more on all this now from Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter. And of course, Kate, that subpoena is going out to acting White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. What are the odds that he complies?
Well, I think based on what we've seen so far, that we see Mulvaney show up today and, just acquiesce without a fight to the subpoena are pretty low. I think that we've seen administration officials down the line all pretty much fighting these subpoenas when they are issued. And so I think that would be kind of the next step here would be to have this play out somewhat in the courts.
Well, what would the goal be for Democrats to issue a subpoena like this to Mulvaney, given that the likelihood that he's going to comply with it is so low?
Well, I think Democrats, we have to remember that they're on the cusp of beginning their public hearing. And so a lot of what is done, not all of what is done, but at least some of what is done for, public effect. And so I would imagine, that the next phase would be Mulvaney would be someone that the Democrats would want to hear from in a public capacity in the next phase. And so I think by issuing the subpoena at this stage, it would be
having a little trouble with Kathleen Hunter's line there. We'll try to muddle on through and see how much we can get to Kathleen Hunter on what's happening in Washington. In the meantime, we're hearing some of these reports about Mick Mulvaney butting heads somewhat with White House counsel Pat Cipollone when it comes to responding to the impeachment in terms of who should be leading the response. What are you hearing about that?
Well, it sounds like between Cipollone, who's the legal counsel, and Mulvaney, there's this tension that's emerged, with essentially the legal counsel, Cipollone, saying that that it's essentially a legal matter, and therefore, because it's a legal matter, his advice should be paramount. And from Mulvaney, we're essentially hearing the opposite, that it's a political matter and so not a legal matter primarily. And so his advice should be paramount. This is a scenario that we've seen played out repeatedly with Trump aides, where there's kind of this infighting. And I think the key element here is that this is obviously a very critical top-level issue for the administration right now. And it's also coming at a time where, by some accounts, Mulvaney's fallen out of favor with the president. And so I think that this could be an interesting dynamic to watch that could in some ways hamstring the White House's response on several fronts.
Yeah, much more to watch as we head toward those first public hearings coming up in just a few days now. Bloomberg Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. And you can read more about these stories on Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg Terminal, and follow all the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington at Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. It's just before 6:54 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Warren can go far left, just not on these issues. I'm Ramesh Ponnuru, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. A new poll shows that President Donald Trump is beating Senator Elizabeth Warren in most key states. The finding has renewed an argument about whether Warren and like-minded Democrats have moved too far left for the party's good. Some progressive policies, like a wealth tax, are popular. The trouble is that Warren has adopted some specific left-wing ideas that are unpopular. She wants to outlaw the private health insurance on which most Americans rely, for example, and have the government pay for abortions. Even if she wins the presidency, it will be nearly impossible to make good on some of these promises. The risks are large and the rewards are low. Some Democrats fear that's true of Warren as well. I'm Ramesh Ponnuru. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg Terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
And you can hear Bloomberg Opinion editorials every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 6:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report, and here's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
And good morning to you, Karen. Brooklyn-based Strong Arm Technologies is a small startup that's out to change the way workers work. They make a black device about the size of a smartphone. This is a monitor for workplace safety. The Strong Arm founder, Sean Peterson, started the company when he was a junior at the Rochester Institute of Technology. He says the inspiration for the product came when he was only 14, when his father was killed on the job at a construction site. Workers wear Strong Arm's monitors on their chests, and using one example, if they bend too deeply to pick up a box or twist too far to set one down, the device vibrates to send a warning that their chance of getting hurt is elevated. Now, Peterson has about 30 clients, including Heineken and Toyota. He's also establishing relationships with insurance companies interested in ways to reduce worker compensation costs. Walmart says it's testing Strong Arm in 8 distribution centers. Strong Arm says its products are designed solely to improve safety. They claim that users wearing them suffered 20 to 50% fewer injuries on the job. It says it's not tracking individual productivity and that its products aren't used to punish individual workers or to contest worker compensation claims. And that, Karen, is today's Bloomberg Small Business Report.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. We continue to watch shares of Gap this morning. They're down 8.4%. It's no longer the khaki king of the 90s. Gap has been in need of an overhaul for a long time. Art Peck will not be the one to deliver it, though. Gap fired its chief executive officer late yesterday after his turnaround efforts failed to reignite sales growth with disappointing third quarter earnings. The apparel company that includes the namesake Gap brand, Athleta, and Banana Republic brought back a member of the founding family to lead the company while it figures out a longer-term plan. And again, those shares down 8.4% this morning. Sources tell Bloomberg Alibaba Group Holding is moving ahead with plans to raise as much as $15 billion in a Hong Kong share sale. We have some earnings reports, or some economic data, rather, that we're looking out for this morning. We're looking out for wholesale inventories and consumer sentiment. Those are both out at 10 o'clock Wall Street time. We are watching the markets this morning. S&P futures, they're little change to lower, down about a point. Dow futures down 5. NASDAQ futures down 8. The DAX in Germany down 0.2%. CAC in Paris down about the same, and the FTSE 100 down 0.25%. 10-year Treasury, little change. Yield 1.91%. The yield on the 2-year, 1.68%. NYMEX crude oil moving lower, down 1.6% or 92 cents at $56.23 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.2% or $2.80 at $14.6360 an ounce. The euro at 1.1026 against the dollar. British pound 1.28, and the yen at 109.40. And straight ahead, it is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential. Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
They don't chant your name when you give blood or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
This winter, why not take the short flight from London to Dublin with Aer Lingus from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. From coastal walks to cosy pubs and friendly locals, you'll find so much to enjoy once you're there. Smart takes a Dublin city break. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Terms and conditions apply.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification.
It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, equities advancing for a fifth straight week. Investors remain patient for a phase one deal. Another sign the global economy might be bottoming out. China's exports dropping less than expected. And as European stocks outperform, Jean-Claude Juncker says Trump won't hit the EU with auto tariffs. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, hello Friday. Here is your Friday morning price action with the S&P 500 going absolutely nowhere. Equity futures down just 2 points on the S&P 500. Home? Not yet, Tom. Okay. After a big move in the bond market in yesterday's session, yields unchanged at 192, a 20 basis point move on a 10-year Treasury yield so far this week. Alongside me, you heard him, Tom Keene and Lisa Abramowitz as well.
He's already asking me to
We've got a few more hours to go, Tom. Come on.
We got to go right to the real yield. You'll see at 1 p.m. this afternoon. Lisa, we have almost a 3 standard deviation move and 3 months 10-year spread. We have a curve flattening since President Trump, like 2 months after President Trump's election, curve flattening, and all of a sudden we've got curve steepening. That's the theme into the weekend, right?
Yes, although I think that the bigger theme is buying the dip, and we saw that action come in at the end of the day yesterday, and frankly, our guest yesterday pretty much saying they were starting to get interested here at these levels.
There is no phase one deal.
She meant in bonds.
That's the story.
I meant in bonds, not
That's
stock.
the story of the week.
Well, 3 standard deviations was not equities.
We start the day where we start it every single morning on phase one deal watch. There is no phase one deal agreement yet.
I strongly support that, and I put this in the script on TV. To me, it's the idea of a one-and-done tariff adjustment, or is it some form of sequence forward, and we still don't know.
This came from Reuters in the last 24 hours. An agreement between the United States and China to roll back existing tariffs as part of a phase one trade deal faces fierce internal opposition in the White House. That is where we are right now. Here in New York, I'm pleased to say, is Stephen Stanley, Chief Economist at Amherst Pierpont. Good morning to you, Stephen.
Good morning.
Your take on the back and forth of all of this. The market has quite clearly made a decisive move. Yields higher, equities advance, yet we still don't have a phase one agreement. What is going on?
Well, you need to let the fun play out a little more. I think every day this week you come in the morning and the market's either up or down based on what the latest trade headline is, and unfortunately it feels like we're going to be dealing with that for at least another month.
Yields seem to be higher, though, on positive news than they are lower on negative news. There's a real difference in terms of the market bias investor attitude than compared to maybe 3 months ago.
Yeah, I think people are getting a little more optimistic. There's a sense in the markets that maybe the global economy, while it's not great, has maybe seen its worst days, and if we are going to get a trade deal, that signals maybe better days ahead going into 2020.
Your take is interesting. The details of a deal are probably less important than the degree of the clarity that it provides. Why so?
Because if you look at the U.S. economy, the bulk of the damage that's been done because of the trade situation is not so much the direct impact of the tariffs, it's the uncertainty that has kept businesses sidelined from investing. Yeah. So if they see something that allows them to move forward with clarity, then it doesn't really matter what the details are. It's just getting them back to the table and investing again.
And Fridays, the game will start, 3 o'clock this afternoon. It'll click on all the blogs, all the analysis, what I call the Gloom Friday tone. It's been there every week in this, walls of worry, up in the markets. Steve Stanley, you're going to drive over that with a bulldozer with an above 2.5% GDP call for the next X number of quarters. How alone do you feel in calling for a better American economy over the next number of quarters?
Well, it's certainly an above consensus call. I would say that it's interesting. The Fed has been much more optimistic in their tone about the economy than the consensus market view for quite a while, but the markets have focused more on the fact that the Fed has been talking about downside risks. Now that the Fed has paused, it feels like the shift has gone away from the risks a little bit and more to the point estimate forecast, I think, a little bit.
Where's the source of growth in the U.S. economy from here?
Well, the consumer continues to be the sector that's kind of driving the train, but I think to get to a faster pace of growth from here, you need to see a little bit of a revival in business investment, which has been negative for the last couple of quarters.
And when we talk about consumers, there are discussions about cracks in the consumer. Do you buy that?
No. I mean, the labor market is very strong. Consumer balance sheets as a whole are pretty clean. I think the consumer's in good shape.
Do you get the feeling, though, that this might be too little, too late, as far as the trade war is concerned? That manufacturing abroad has taken such a massive hit that it might be inevitable that it bleeds across to other parts of the economy. What do you make of that argument?
I don't think that that's inevitable. I guess the bleed point, it seems like, would be the labor market, right? Because businesses have gotten pretty cautious on investment, but they're still hiring. Is there a point at which they stop hiring? And that was a real concern, I think, over the last few months. And the payroll report last Friday, I think, alleviated that concern to a great degree, because not only did you get a better than expected number in October, but you got significant upward revisions to the prior 2 months. So all of a sudden, that slowing trajectory that we thought we were seeing isn't there anymore.
Enlighten us on the makeup of the marginal decline in exports. There's a wonderful article at IMF. It was based off IMF research. I think it was in the FT. It talked about global auto demand, unit demand down, etc. But when we say exports are down, is that 6 tankers out of Portland with soybeans on them? Is that automobiles? Is that IBM computers? What is it? iPhone? No, iPhones are coming this way. But when we say we have declining exports, what is that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because U.S. exports, if you look at kind of what are the big categories, a lot of it is stuff that you would call kind of low on the supply chain, raw materials, and we used to export a lot of waste paper to China, for example, and scrap metal and stuff like that, and then stuff at the very high end, and certainly one thing there would be Boeing. I mean, we know that Boeing exports obviously are kind of dead in the water right now because of the MAX. But yeah, I mean, I think you've seen a lot of volatility from 1 month to the next, and a lot of that is trying to time these changes in tariffs. It'll be interesting if we do get a deal and we get some stability to see what happens.
2 reasons for optimism now. 1, that we may get a phase 1 truce between the United States and China. And 2, there are signs that the global economy is bottoming out. In the trade data today, expectations that Chinese exports may completely roll over once again. Better than expected. Still weaker, but better than expected. Do you see those signs as well, Stephen? And is that more important than a potential for a trade truce, that the global economy is showing signs of bottoming out?
Yeah, I mean, it's not getting worse anymore. I don't want to jump the gun and say that things are getting hugely are hugely improved from here, but it does feel like it's kind of settling at a bottom, and hopefully will rebound from there. I do think the trade thing is critical here, because even the economies that aren't necessarily directly tied, and I would give the example of Germany, there's no reason that their economy should be affected by U.S.-China trade negotiations, but it is, because they are so highly leveraged trade.
Stephen Stanley, we are just immune on the American consumer. I won't shop below 59th Street. Farrell won't go below Saks. Lisa was seen in Soho like 3 months ago, I think, shopping. What is the state of the American consumer away from our little, 2 zip code view here?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got a 3.5% unemployment rate. You've got high consumer confidence, and you've got a savings rate above 8%.
So are we saving, or are we going to spend it, this weekend below 14th Street at the Gucci down in Soho?
I would just say that, most retailers that I've heard from are expecting a very good holiday season.
Do you buy that? I was thinking about that walking around, above 59th Street last night. Do you really buy that we're going to have a bang-up holiday season?
I don't see why not. I mean, almost everybody has a job, and people are feeling pretty good about things. So, yeah, I think we will have a good holiday season.
Have you ever got below 56th Street? Ever?
Once.
What for?
I did an interview at the old GE office building, which is, I think, on 53rd.
And you had to go below 56.
It was like the studios were right in Jack Welch's old office.
Did you notice the climate change?
I have a serious quick question, Steve.
Sure.
When you talk about Gucci, the high-end shopper versus the low-end shopper, where will the strength come from?
Well, I think the good news, there have been concerns about, obviously in the political realm, there's a lot of talk about income inequality. But even within the economic circles, I think there's been some concern about the narrow benefits, that the upper income households were getting all the benefit. And what we've seen lately, which is pretty classic for an economic cycle, is as you get longer into the cycle, the benefits start to move down the curve. And I think what we're saying is now you've got labor shortages even for unskilled workers. You've got wages going up faster for unskilled than for skilled workers. So I think there is some, if you want to call it, democratization of the expansion.
Stephen Stanley, thank you so much for the Emerson Pierpont. Greatly appreciate that this morning. Bloomberg Surveillance is always, and we say thank you to Cohn Resnick. Transform your tax game. The Cohn Resnick team can help dealmakers develop a winning tax strategy. Visit CohnResnick.com/tax insight. And we thank Cohn Resnick for their good support. Futures -2. John and I are like 50-50. Early breakfast today, John. What do you think?
I've got a few more shows to do, but I wish I could.
This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
And now for the news from New York City, here is Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Tom. A senior State Department official offered pointed testimony in the ongoing impeachment inquiry. George Kent says the White House pressured Ukraine President Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden and his son. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is once again considering a run for president in 2020, with an advisor saying he is concerned the current Democratic contenders will not defeat President Trump. Mr. Bloomberg has not made a final decision on whether to run, but is expected to file to get on the ballot in Alabama's presidential primary, which has an early filing deadline. Michael Bloomberg is founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent of Bloomberg Radio. President Trump heads to Atlanta today to launch what his campaign is calling Black Voices for Trump. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Lisa, Jonathan.
Michael, thanks so much. DXY index up fractionally, yen 109.39. Screaming risk on. Futures flat. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. We dropped off our Christmas shopping at the hotel. Then it was off to be spellbound at the Theatre Royal Bath. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
1 in 10 Londoners surveyed said they'll give more to charity in the next 12 months. Are you one of them? At CAF, we help generous people like you support their favourite charities by making giving simple. And we provide charities with the tools they need to perform at their best. So together, we can make a bigger difference for our communities. We're a charity and a champion for better giving. We are CAF, and we make giving count. Visit cafonline.org to find out more.
Just because you travel doesn't mean you can't keep your routine. The more obstacles travel puts between us and our well-being, the more we strive to eat well. At Westin Hotels and Resorts, we're focused on empowering your well-being. With Westin Fresh by the Juicery, you can stay revitalized with a fresh assortment of juices and smoothies. And start the day right. Don't leave your well-being behind. We give you the choice to get up or to rise. Search Westin online to find out more. Westin, let's rise.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 83 million. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £83 million.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Rishad Salamat.
As companies see true value in ESG, they will have to work harder in using it as a dashboard rather than a method to inform stakeholders. Joining us now from Singapore is Robert Rubinstein, a TBLI Group founding partner and chairman. Tell us what impacting investing is, first of all.
It's trying to achieve a market rate return as well as this measurable social and environmental added value.
So, investment which takes place, which actually just changed things in society here as well. And how much evidence is there that you get more bang for your buck as a shareholder seeking returns from this type of investing?
Well, I mean, if you look at, we've been educating asset owners and managers about ESG and impact investing for 25 years. And over those 25 years, there's been hundreds, literally thousands of reports showing that at worst there's no underperformance, and at best there's an outperformance. But the issue is more not about proof, it's about belief. If people believe that it's not going to work, then they will believe that. So that's been more the challenge, more the education side, because the proof is clearly there, but if you don't want to believe it, then it's not going to happen.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 7:17 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing, providing the latest thought leadership with strategic and actionable insights to help you manage and grow your business. Visit the Perspective section of Pershing.com to learn more. Now let's check the latest headlines with Chris Kirkham at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Karen. Investors are watching for signs of movement on trade. White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow confirmed an agreement to roll back tariffs in phases as part of any deal with China. Disney is bringing Amazon on board for its streaming service. Disney Plus will appear on Amazon, Samsung and LG devices when it launches next week. Alibaba's Hong Kong IPO is back on. Sources say the company is gearing up for a listing hearing next week and is aiming to raise up to $15 billion. And one of Tesla's most vocal detractors got burned by Elon Musk after short seller David Einhorn lashed out at Musk in a letter to investors. The Tesla chief offered to take him on a tour of its facilities and accompanied the offer with a gift of short shorts. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen?
Chris, thank you. S&P futures are now little change to higher. They're up 2 points. Dow futures up 27. NASDAQ futures up 4.5. The DAX in Germany is down 0.2%. 10-year Treasury down 4/30 seconds, yield 1.93%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.69%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Hey, Karen, thanks so much. Lisa, this is such an honor. Are you kidding me? We have the gentleman with this accent time.
Yes.
We have the Bristol accent here from England.
Evidently, that's what we're going to
talk
talk
about. Broomy Boys here this morning. What is a Broomy accent?
I don't have one.
You don't have one?
If you ever watched Peaky Blinders on Netflix, those guys have a Brummie accent. That's an accent associated with the city of Birmingham in the United Kingdom.
And it's literally like, 40 miles? The accents changed that much?
Basically.
And Tom Orlick is about to get back on a plane to go to Beijing because he's just like, I don't really want to be discussing accents.
Tom Orlick doesn't have an accent that I would associate with Bristol.
Okay, but it's just fascinating. Like Chris Kirkham was just such a different accent. It's just very, very cool.
Tom Orlick, tell us about your childhood.
No, I just think it's really, really
Tom's
interesting.
hoping we don't go there.
The different
I agree
accents.
with you.
So let's go to China right now. And the accents in China is a culture, Tom Orlick. I mean, it's still partitioned. How does the Chinese
Can we
leadership...
introduce him properly?
He's the head of economics at Bloomberg. That's all you got to know.
Carry on.
Okay, thank you. But in China, we look at it, U.S., China, U.S., China. In Beijing, they're still dealing with the many accents and peoples of China, aren't they? It's a huge issue.
It's an absolutely enormous issue, Tom, and I think we see it bubbling to the surface extremely visibly right now in Hong Kong. Not currently something which is whacking the global economy, but one of the many issues which could bubble to the surface and start impacting those U.S.-China trade talks.
Well, there is a sense that Beijing is trying to unite the country in a lot of different ways. And I'm thinking of the banking system in particular. Recently, there was an effort to consolidate some of the many rural and regional banks. And this was an attempt to support them, to prevent them from going under. How should we take that? How should we read that news? Should it be sort of indicative of weakness that China is concerned about?
I think one plausible take on China's financial sector over the last 5 or 6 years is that they are in a hidden crisis. They're in a hidden crisis which they're attempting to resolve through a series of fairly extreme measures. We've had a massive shift in the way local government debt is managed. Local governments were allowed to take all of their high-cost short-term debt and turn it into low-cost long-term debt. We've had, as you mentioned, Lisa, this move to merge some of the smaller city-level banks. We've had the PBOC taking over a particularly poorly performing bank. Now, this isn't a crisis which is going to bubble up and hit like the Lehman moment in the US in 2008. But what I think we have is a lot of stress, especially at city level and rural banks, and the government working very energetically at the same time as they're wrestling with the trade war to try and deal with this problem.
So, Tom, how does that manifest itself in a broader economy?
So I think it's manifesting itself as a broader slowdown. People are very focused on the trade war as the main drag on China, and it's certainly a big negative. Exports to the US sharply down in the last 2 years. But what's also going on is that this attempt to manage the huge levels of stress in the city and rural banks is hitting credit growth. And when you hit credit growth, you hit investment. And that's the dual challenge which China's wrestling with, the trade war hitting exports, the deleveraging agenda hitting investment.
This is really, really important because a lot of people out there think that if we get a trade truce, the global economy will start to pick up, perhaps driven by China. Are you saying that view is slightly misplaced?
So the trade war is a drag. It's a drag because of the tariffs. It's a drag especially because of the uncertainty. But I think the idea that if we remove the trade war, we're going to see a re-acceleration in China is probably mistaken. I don't think there's a lot of Chinese firms which have put their investment projects on hold and they're waiting to hit go on that capital spending as soon as the trade war is over.
All right, 20 seconds. The flip side of this, how close are we to a Chinese crisis if the global economy does not reaccelerate?
I think China's policymakers still have policy space, and I expect them to use it. I don't think we're going to see anything which looks like a Lehman-type shock in China in the foreseeable future.
Tom Ehrlich, always great to get your thoughts. Chief Economist for Bloomberg Economics, joining us here in New York City. Let me get you up to speed on the price action just very quickly this Friday morning. We do grind towards a fifth straight week of gains on the S&P 500. Futures, Tom, absolutely dead flat. The really interesting move this week for me, the bond market 10-year yields up 20 basis points on the week so far.
Are we at 1.9364? John, are we on the 2% watch?
We were yesterday.
I'm not there yet.
We came really close yesterday, 197.
I didn't know that. I was in my surveillance nap at the time. What I would notice, two things, John. Gold, 1457 is really giving it up. And the other's yen just continues the grind, 109.47. Weaker Japanese yen.
What is interesting, though, Tom, stronger dollar on the week. Dollar index up by about 1%. You would have thought as global risk appetite picks up, the dollar would roll over. We've not seen that this week.
We have not. Futures up 2, Dow futures up 30. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Shares of Disney are powering higher in pre-market trading. The big entertainment company reported better than expected quarterly results, led by phenomenal profit in its film studio, which surged 79%. The theme park saw profits, but earnings fell at ESPN and ABC TV. Meanwhile, Disney has secured a deal to put its coming streaming service Disney Plus on Amazon, Samsung, and LG devices, guaranteeing it will reach millions of potential subscribers. It already had devices from Apple and Roku on board for the $7 a month service that launches next month. U.S. markets start out at record highs today after the Dow yesterday jumped 182 points. The S&P rose 8 and the Nasdaq was up 24. The stock futures this morning are slightly lower. We get an update today on how the consumer is feeling so far for the month of November. And crude oil is down. It's at $56.28 a barrel. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Hey, y'all, Jeff.
They don't chant your name when you give blood or sing songs about you. but patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
Ladies and gents, may I introduce a magical number? 25! Oh yes, 25 UK millionaires guaranteed in tonight's Euro Millions.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m. 90% UK coverage.
In cinemas November 15th. So you're going to build a car to beat Ferrari? With a Ford. Correct. Get ready for Le Mans 66. I hate guys like us because we're different. Starring Matt Damon and Christian Bale. What are they doing? Making your car go faster. That's more like it! Based on the incredible true story. You got a plan? It's high risk. Of Ford versus Ferrari.
No, I thought the whole point was to win the damned race.
Le Mans 66. Hit it. In cinemas and IMAX November 15.
This winter, why not take the short flight from London to Dublin with Aer Lingus from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. From coastal walks to cosy pubs and friendly locals, you'll find so much to enjoy once you're there. Smart takes a Dublin city break. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Terms and conditions apply.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Whether you're waiting for a train or a takeaway, with Tesco Mobile you don't have to wait for a brilliant deal. Our best ever Black Friday event is on. This week you can get a Samsung Galaxy A50 for just $17.49 a month. That's our lowest ever price. Get yours by the 10th of November. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £18.99, now £17.49. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, various policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell. The news you need to know this hour. US equity futures are little changed, heading for a fifth straight week of gains as trade continues to dominate investor focus. Investors remain patient for a phase one deal, an agreement that as yet still remains elusive. On the earnings front, investors like what they're seeing from Disney. Shares up 5% in early trading after profit topped estimates. Anticipation also high for the debut of Disney's streaming service. That comes due next week. And finally, shares of Gap are down nearly 10% in early trading after earnings missed estimates. But the real shocker, the retailer firing the CEO Art Peck. The move comes after his turnaround efforts failed to reignite sales at Gap. Some of the stories we'll be talking about through the next couple of hours then on Bloomberg Radio. And now time for some headlines from around the world. Let's say good morning to Michael Barr. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jonathan. Good morning, Tom. Good morning, Lisa. President Donald Trump insists his dealings with Ukraine's president were not a demand for corruption investigation of a political rival in exchange for military funding from the U.S. But career State Department official George Kent told the impeachment inquiry that getting a commitment from the Ukraine leader was Kent's understanding of what it would take to unlock U.S. military aid. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is once again considering a run for president in 2020, with an advisor saying he is concerned the current Democratic contenders will not defeat President Trump. Mr. Bloomberg has not made a final decision on whether to run, but is expected to file to get on the ballot in Alabama's presidential primary, which has an early filing deadline. Michael Bloomberg is founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent of Bloomberg Radio. A worker at the Buffalo Wild Wings in Burlington, Massachusetts, died last night after exposure to a cleaning agent in the restaurant's kitchen. 10 of the workers were sickened. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Jonathan.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. It's time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Report. Here is John Stashower.
John, the Islanders are the hottest team in hockey, 10 wins in a row, and last night in Brooklyn, very much on their way to an 11th win in a row. They led Pittsburgh 3-0 in the third period. The Penguins came back, scored 3 times in a span of just over 7 minutes, and then Brian Rust unassisted in overtime to win 4-3. So the Isles pick up a point, but their winning streak is over. Rangers moved over 500, a 4-2 win at Carolina, so they sweep back-to-back games. Henrik Lundqvist won them both, 35 saves over Detroit, and then 45 more last night. The Devils lost in Calgary 5-2. The Knicks are in Dallas tonight. It was 10 months ago that Kristaps Porzingis demanded that the Knicks trade him. He's helped the Mavs to a 5-2 start. The Nets begin a 5-game road trip tonight in Portland. College hoops, Rutgers opened its season a 2-point win over Bryant. The Yankees have a new pitching coach, Matt Blake, only 33 years old. He was a Yankee scout briefly, most recently worked for the Indians. He replaces Larry Rothschild, who had the job the past 11 years. Week 10 in the NFL underway. The Raiders scored with a minute left, beat the Chargers in Oakland 26-24. So the Raiders, who lost 12 games last year, are 5-4. The Chargers, who won 12 games last year, are 4-6. With a Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower.
John Stashower, thank you. John there with the sports. You've had the news. Let's get you some price action. On the day, unchanged on the S&P 500. Looking at futures at the moment. On the week, positive 0.6% and grinding towards 5 straight weeks of gains. In the bond market, yields with a lift in the last 30 minutes or so. We're now up 2 basis points to 194. The lows for the year, September 3rd, 143. We have had a 50 basis point move in under 3 months on a US 10-year yield.
From our world headquarters in New York, good morning, everyone. John Farrow, Tom King, Lisa Abramowitz with us this morning. Flat futures up 22. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, offering hands-on learning in the largest makerspace in New Jersey for those working in manufacturing and mechatronics. More at njit.edu/manufacturing. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. U.S. prosecutors say the Saudi government recruited 2 Twitter employees to get personal account information of critics, including a popular journalist with more than 1 million followers and other prominent government critics. WeWork allegedly uses facial scans to track people in its shared office spaces without informed written consent, in violation of the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act, according to a class complaint in Illinois State Court. The state law allows for $1,000 to $5,000 in statutory damages per violation. That could mean significant liability for WeWork, depending on the size of the potential class and the viability of the plaintiff's claims. James Dean hasn't been alive for 64 years, but the star of Rebel Without a Cause has been cast in a new film about the Vietnam War. The filmmakers behind the independent film Finding Jack say a computer-generated Dean will play a co-starring role in the upcoming production. The digital Dean is to be assembled through old footage and photos and voiced by another actor. Digitally manipulated posthumous performances have made some inroads into films, but those have been largely roles the actors already played, including Carrie Fisher and Peter Cushing in Star Wars movies. But there's been widespread criticism of the idea that one of Hollywood's most beloved former stars could be digitally resurrected.
James Dean.
Jimmy Bean.
And that's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan.
Bob Moon, thanks so much. 5 things you need to know to start your day. Brought to you by Portfolio Analysts, powered by Interactive Brokers. Savvy investors use Portfolio Analysts to create a consolidated view of their finances and check the health of their complete financial portfolio. Sign up for free. Do that at portfolioanalyst.com. Portfolioanalyst.com. John, off the radar, Hong Kong. Karen Lee was really trenchant this morning from Hong Kong about what this weekend could bring. It's not visible, but she said there's enough going on where radar up for the weekend.
Well, you've mentioned this. The risk with these things, as always, Tom, the longer they persist, the more some people become desensitized to them. And these protests now have been going on for months. But I think protesters, once again, getting really riled up on the streets of Hong Kong after a student who fell in a parking garage near a protest earlier this week actually died.
Yeah, that's a catalyst, but also just simply democracy as well. Just can there be a vote? Just very interesting. And of course, Carrie Lam, the leader there, meeting with President Xi 6, 7, 8 days ago as well. Okay, trade rollbacks in the stock market. Can you link the two?
Sure. If we get a phase one agreement, the market seems to be taking all of this in its stride. I think this is absolutely fascinating through the week so far. We'll agree to roll back tariffs if we agree to a phase one deal. As yet, we haven't agreed to a phase one deal. That's essentially the message this week, and that's the reaction from the market up. And Treasury yields, Tom. The data hasn't been great, but I think that's the takeaway for so many people. Just so long as it doesn't get worse, Treasuries we reprice. And Lisa, just a massive week for 10-year yields.
The most salient comment I've heard recently is that the market was looking for an excuse to do what it already wanted to do. So it's using the trade talk as an excuse to push yields higher, to go into stocks. And I think that that's what we're seeing.
Up another 2 basis points this morning, Tom. 194 on the US 10-year.
194, you just said 197 high and 2%. It's extraordinary. Again, we're starting to see significant moves there as well. Can I just say, after looking at the Uber Lyft chart on a log basis today, I mean, this unwind of a gajillion, zillion shares, it's original. I'm talking to Arthur Levitt yesterday. John, this isn't the way it used to be. This is a different rule book. And I don't know what else much more. I don't have any wisdom on the vector out to 2021 or 25 of when they go profitable.
This is the pre-IPO shareholders and the insiders, the so-called insiders, dumping stock now the IPO lockup has ended.
Two thoughts here. First of all, Uber is not WeWork, and I think that this is the question. A lot of people sort of writing off Uber as yet another unicorn that was overbid, but there is a real business model here, and sort of where is the price for that is the question. Where is the profit model? It could be profitable. The question is when it can jack up prices, right? That's number one. But number two, my question is who's selling, right? The pre-IPO buyers, a lot of them were mutual funds and other sort of big institutional buyers. I'm curious to know who they are.
You don't think this was another unicorn that was mispriced? It's down 13%.
Mispriced is one thing. Having a business model that has a reason to exist is another.
Does it?
Well, do you use Uber?
I mean, I talk about this with Cameron Christ.
Rating?
Okay, let's say I start a business, right? And I sell $1 notes for 90 cents. Do you think that business is going to do pretty well? I imagine I'll be pretty busy for a while.
I'm going to go back. This is the arch theory of Meghdon Desai of the London School of Economics. The modern feature on business models is baloney. It's about profit. Meghdon Desai 101.
I just think
it's about profit.
When I talk to investors, and I'm talking to a lot of investors about Uber, there is a deep question about whether we're dealing with the same kind of thing as WeWork, which perhaps doesn't have the same right to exist.
Okay, we're here. I'm locked in 11 a.m. Sunday morning, Man City, Liverpool.
Can you just pretend it's with some enthusiasm?
What do I want to watch?
Liverpool, Manchester City, Sunday,
what do I want to watch on the field? And again, help those of us that one uniform's blue, one uniform's red. That's all we know.
Are we going to see the attacking kind of football led by the likes of Salah, Firmino and Mane, Sterling, Aguero? Are we going to see that, or are we going to see it get really, really bunched up in the midfield and the kind of boring game that you don't want to watch?
See how he does
I hope for the former and not the latter.
With his broomy accent.
That wasn't a broomy accent.
It's very broomy.
This is not.
Bloomberg.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
With a Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. Digital media company Minute Media is in talks to buy the Players Tribune, a website started by former baseball star Derek Jeter. According to people familiar with the matter, while the companies are in exclusive talks, there is no guarantee the discussions will lead to a deal. The potential value of the Players Tribune is unknown to the public. Colorado, the first state to legalize recreational pot, has become the 14th to legalize sports betting. It joins Oregon and Nevada as the only states to collect revenue from both sin taxes. But even in that small club, Colorado stands out. Oregon misses out on millions by charging no sales tax, while Nevada has no income tax. Colorado collects on both, meaning money collected from legal sports betting and a much larger pool of pot taxes, potentially nearly $1 billion total over the next 5 years, is essentially bonus revenue. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Family properties and investments have been passed to the next generation, but while the business has evolved, has your accountant stayed behind? Burden Accountants and Advisors examines the latest business trends, market conditions, and industry issues to maximize your tax advantages and meet your financial goals. Let Burden use their insight to create innovative tax solutions for your family and your business. Visit burdenllp.com to get started. BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Reaction coming in from potential rivals as former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg makes it known he's about to jump into the Democratic presidential race. Correspondent Christina Alessi checking on two already in the race.
Senator Sanders' campaign manager lashing out at Bloomberg, stating more billionaires seeking more political power surely isn't the change America needs. Senator Warren tweeting out her tax calculator for billionaires.
It's not enough just to have somebody come in, anybody, and say they're going to buy this election.
Former Attorney General Jeff Sessions is running to reclaim his old Senate seat from Alabama, putting out an ad last night trying to get closer to President Trump.
The president's doing a great job for America and Alabama, and he has my strong support.
Lamora, Mexico resident David Langford says his community of roughly 300 Americans is no longer safe after 9 members of his family were massacred. He buried his wife and 2 of his kids under guard. I'm Michael Toscano.
Deals, courts, and world leaders.
When you served on the National Security Council staff, is this something people model?
It's all in Balance of Power with David Weston.
How bad an attack was this?
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures, little change this morning. Most European stocks are slipping, and this is after U.S. stocks rose to records yesterday. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures, again, little change. Dow futures up 14, NASDAQ futures down 5. The DAX in Germany's down 0.2%. 10-year Treasury down 8/30 seconds, yield 1.94%. Yield on the 2-year 1.69%. NYMEX crude oil down 1 1/3% or 77 cents at 56.39 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.5% or $7.60 at 14.5880 an ounce. The euro 1.1030 against the dollar. British pound 1.2803 and the yen at 109.46. ICBC Standard Bank, a venture between the biggest lenders in China and Africa, will close its base metals and equities businesses because of poor performance and difficult market conditions. Sources tell Bloomberg Alibaba Group Holding is moving ahead with plans to raise as much as $15 billion in a Hong Kong share sale. And we're watching shares of Gap down 8.4% this morning. It fired its chief executive officer late yesterday after his turnaround efforts failed to reignite sales growth. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. Pleased to say that joining us on the phone looking out to 2020, Jonathan Golub, Chief U.S. Equity Strategist for Credit Suisse. John, let's talk about it, shall we? You've been a fantastic guide through 2019 for how this market will develop. Your next call is a near-term cyclical upturn and a rotation towards the cyclical groups over the defensive names. Just walk us through your latest thinking, John, and what underpins it.
All right. You know, John, over the last 6 months, what we've experienced is decelerating, weaker economic activity and falling interest rates, and that is not a productive environment for the market. But more recently, what we've seen is the data has stopped getting worse and is now beginning to get better. We're talking about industrial data both here and in the U.S., and that is driving a really large rotation. So what you're seeing now is that value is beating growth, and more risky small caps are beating more stable large caps. Emerging markets are beating developed markets, and all of those things have not worked for the last 6 or 12 months, and we think it has legs to go.
John, let me cut to the chase. February of 2016, John Golub says get in the market. Tom Keene says stay in cash. November of 2016, et cetera, and on. And every time there's a pullback, I'm staying in cash, and you're saying load the boat. Can you say that right now?
Well, you know, it's not you have to really ask the question why. If you look at why I'm
in the triple leveraged all cash fund.
Yeah. No, the question is, why are things going bad? If you look at what happened in the fourth quarter, it wasn't an economic event. What it really was a liquidity-driven issue without fundamental backing, and therefore, when you see that the market spasm for reasons that are divorced from economics, you want to jump in when things seem worse. But Tom, just one more thought. When the market was racing ahead in April or May, and I saw the data deteriorating, I said pause. So they're really different.
Okay, but John, speaking of divorce, I'm going to get divorced because I've been up 2 or 3%. Watch yourself. I've been up 2 or 3% this year, and the market is up 22%. I mean, John Golub, to be honest with your courage to be in the market, which has been great, how many people are like me and so far behind?
You know, I could tell you when I'm talking to professional investors right now, their level of optimism is quite high, and I'd say those that have been on the fence and in the Tom Keene camp, they're getting dragged into this market, and the reason is that the Fed is now more supportive, the data is now supportive, and more importantly, the market's now telling you that there's something going on and pulling people in.
But I would argue that going back to your first point, Jonathan, and it's a good one, that it was a liquidity crisis in December. It wasn't necessarily a fundamental one. On the flip side, you could say that there isn't really a change economically here either, other than just people are sick of being bearish, right?
No, Lisa, I disagree with that. So, what are we seeing? The consensus economic view, which I pull right off my Bloomberg terminal, says that the European data likely bottomed in the third quarter. The U.S. industrial data, according to Bloomberg, is bottoming right now in the fourth quarter, and the market is anticipating those turning points. Interest rates, which are an indication of demand for capital, which is a positive read, have jumped from about 1.5% closer to 2% on a 10-year government bond. The price of copper has gone up over gold. They think about gold is what you buy when you want to get into Tom Keene's bunker. Copper is what you buy if you're a factory and you think you have orders coming in. So
you buy Gucci if you want to go to his bunker. Let me just tell you.
Really beating up on Tom Keene today. Let's continue this conversation.
John Golub,
we've got another 5 minutes of this left.
John, this is serious. Golub is one of the few people. Gina Martin Adams of Bloomberg has been brilliant, and there's others as well who that point said, no, you need to stay invested.
I totally agree. The story of this year, though, and I think it's been so counterintuitive for so many people, John, and you and I have talked about it, just how defensive this market was, even though simultaneously it was pushing all-time highs. John, are we saying that we can get some leadership from this rotation into 2020? And when we talk about the data, let me talk about this. 2020, the consensus view now for economists is 1.7 on US GDP. Is trend growth of in and around 1.7%, is that enough to get it done?
Now you're getting to a really important point, which is what I'm not saying here is that we have a super strong economy. We're off to the races. What I am saying is the deceleration. If you look at where we've been in 2018, economic growth was about 3%. In 2019, 2.3. Next year, forecasts are for it to accelerate further. What we are seeing, though, is that the process of the data deceleration is stopping. So we're really removing the deceleration. But if you ask me a question, are we going to be in a fast-growing, robust economy? No. And I think that at some point in time, you probably get a rotation away from these more cyclically high-risk assets. But I think that this is a trade that you're going to see work for the next 3 to 6 months. And as investors know, when the tone of the market changes away from defensives towards cyclicals or back, that's when all the alpha generation happens. That's when investors make that incremental return.
If we don't get a phase one deal, are all bets off?
I don't think so. I mean, let's look at what we're really talking about here. The administration was fighting the right fight, which is China does not let foreigners have access to the market, their economic markets, the way that they have to ours. They were uncomfortable with intellectual property issues or other things like that. And the reason the tariffs have been put on is a way for the administration to address this. If all we get is a removal of the tariff and the rhetoric, then we didn't get enough out of this. So maybe we'll get a ceasefire, but the difference between a ceasefire and a détente is a big deal.
John, can you buy the banks? You're with a Swiss bank, so I think I got some comfort here talking about the U.S. banks with you. Are you able to buy the banks after the 2019 move they've had?
I think that the banks are actually going to be leading the market as we go into next year. I mean, what you have is an economy. I mean, what do banks want? They want a steeper yield curve. Check, we're getting that. They want slightly higher interest rates. Check, we're getting that. And they want an economy that doesn't look like we're going in a recession because everybody then pays their loans. What I think the real courage is right now is if you like that story, you probably want to play in the more beaten up European banks that so many people are saying are uninvestable, and yet all of those conditions benefit European banks more than the high quality U.S. banks that have done as well as, not as well as the market, but have done better.
Hey, John, great to catch up with you. As always enjoy listening to you. Jonathan Golub, their Chief U.S. Equity Strategist for Credit Suisse, on the year ahead with just a little bit more optimism, Tom.
There's some jokes about it, John, but these people get paid to make tough decisions. And at the end of 2015, would that roll over?
In the last growth scare before this one, yeah.
Step up. Ben Laidler was at HSBC. His call at the end of Q4 last year is one of the greatest calls I've ever seen in equity strategy.
He was looking for 20% in 2019, and everyone turned around and said, what?
It was like, wait, was that like a typo? Did I hear that wrong?
Yeah.
And we make light of it, folks. But, these guys can be wrong. Gollum's been wrong uncountable times. But I'm kidding.
Should we get him back on the phone?
Let's get him on the phone. but seriously, Chris emails in.
What does Chris say?
Tom, you have no clue what a broomy accent is.
You don't. And we're not going to do one.
Is that like John Lennon? Seriously?
No, that's Liverpool.
And they're not that far apart, right?
That's a Scouse accent.
How far is Birmingham from Liverpool?
3-hour drive, something like that.
Oh, that much? I did not know that.
But the accents change a lot from city to city.
Sure, 3-hour drive. That's true in America, too.
Not as true, I don't think.
No, not as true, definitely.
I think you have to drive a whole lot further.
Chris, thanks for listening today. Chris from Birmingham.
To get that difference.
Yeah.
You causing trouble over there?
No, I got a lot of emails on my insulting of Birmingham. I said, I'm not insulting them. I'm fascinated. Tom Orlick's, the accents are something.
Tom's from Bristol, although Tom doesn't have an accent.
Where's Bristol? Southwestern?
Precisely.
Yeah.
On the coast.
And Norwich is different, over like Anglia or like where the Pilgrims are from.
That's on the east.
And you could tell, like instantly, you can tell.
Do you want to keep up the ratings that we've got?
No, I'm just getting ready for the Crown this weekend. We'll binge the Crown.
There's stuff going on in markets right now.
Do you want to run us through?
Continue.
Carry on.
I will just say this, one point that you were making about the hard decision to go into risk right now. Triple C's. Hearing some people dipping back in, seeing the yields contract.
Really serious stuff. Thanks, Lisa.
Something. I mean, come on.
From New York, this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg.
Just because you travel doesn't mean you can't keep your routine. The more obstacles travel puts between us and our well-being, the more we strive to sleep well. At Westin Hotels and Resorts, we're focused on empowering your well-being. With our Sleep Well menu and lavender balm, you can refuel your body and mind and meet the challenges of the day head-on. Don't leave your well-being behind. We give you the choice to get up or to rise. Search Westin online to find out more. Westin, let's rise.
It's another Friday afternoon. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom Keene. Bloomberg Surveillance, Lisa Bramo. It's on a Friday as well. Thrilled that we are here. Lots going on. A churn to the market. Futures are really all over the place in a narrow band. -4 right now. They were green on the screen a little bit minute ago. And yields, well, there we are. 194 in the 10-year yield, up 2 basis points. That's maybe the story of the day. Lisa, what's the single observable fact about the yield market in the last 5 days?
Well, the question I have is, what point will it impede the rally in stocks? And it seems like 2.5% is the place. And right now we're not seeing a sort of correlation between the rise in yields and any sort of hampering effect on stocks. I think that's compelling.
Yeah, we haven't seen the pullback, and with the VIX 12.92, you just don't see the equity pullback this morning, even with futures -3. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning, brought to you by Cohn Resnick. Planning a transaction, turn your tax strategy into a competitive advantage. To learn how, visit Cohn Resnick's Capital Markets Tax Resource Center. Do that at CohnReznick.com/tax insight. Let me spell that: CohnReznick, CohnReznick.com/tax insight. John, interesting news flow. I mean, a lot of international relations stuff, but just almost a market exhausted by the moves of the last 5 days.
Massive bond market move on the week, up 20 basis points on a US 10-year, 194
you had
at the
a
moment.
3-month statistic up.
3-month highs. 3-month highs on a 10-year Treasury yield.
And up a zillion basis points in that period.
We are up by around about 50 basis points from the September lows, which were the year-to-date lows.
The core issue here, this goes to Raphael Bostic with Mike McKee this morning, Fed Bank of Atlanta. Is this what you get out of a hawkish cut?
No, that's what you get out of some optimism around the trade story and the potential for global growth bottoming out.
I think that's what you get when people realize that the end of the world trade has gone too far. And I think that's, the question is maybe it hasn't, right?
Well, no, that's the global growth bottoming out story. That's precisely it. The people pushed it too far, too quickly. There's no recession in the United States on the horizon. That's the consensus view, not my judgment call. Yesterday, I just thought was really interesting. We had a 14 basis point move at one point on a 10-year Treasury. Would have been the biggest daily pop on a 10-year yield since November 2016. There was a real reason to have a massive pop in November 2016. It was just after the election. Yesterday, it was seemingly on fumes and some peripheral headlines around the trade story. There still is no trade agreement between the United States and China.
For Global Wall Street gearing up for Friday and for the weekend, Stephen Stanley joining us in the last hour of Amherst Pierpont, and he has a stunning above 2.5% GDP call for the next 6 months. Very few people out there have that optimism. Stanley adamant it is all linked into trade, which is a good way to bring in our next guest on China. John, why don't you bring in Miranda?
Miranda Carr, Haitong International Senior Macro Strategist, joins us now. Miranda, great to have you with us on the program. Let's start with the data out of China, shall we? Expectations for exports to roll over, they weaken, but not as much as expected. Please help us understand whether we have seen the worst of the data in China.
Well, yeah, on the trade side, it was actually the exports were only down 0.9%, which is a lot better than expectations. And interestingly, a lot of it seems to be being diverted. So it's not coming from China, but it's going to the US maybe, but it's going to other Asian nations and also to places like Taiwan. So we're actually seeing quite a lot of trade being diverted rather than necessarily going to the US market. And the interesting thing is now this is basically you're coming on for a year of the trade war really sort of having an impact. And we're now getting into much weaker year-on-year comparisons. So actually, if this is as bad as it gets, then for the next few months, we might actually see improving figures from China rather than a continued slowdown.
Miranda, today was the exports that were better than expected. It wasn't the imports that really picked up. The imports still look weak. That's a story of weak domestic demand for a lot of people. Any signs that things are actually picking up in the domestic economy?
Well, on the import side, it's actually interesting. So you've actually got, if you look at the volumes were actually pretty good.
Interesting.
Crude oil was up about 12%. Copper was down, but then you had things like sort of the plastics and so interestingly the chip deliveries were actually really strong at about 12%. But it was the value that basically dragged everything down. So if you think the oil prices and a lot of the commodity prices have come down over the last year, so that's making it look worse than it actually is. And if you strip that out, then you're basically talking maybe sort of 1 to 2 percentage points down rather than the -6. But I mean, coming forward, I think that's going to then also you do have some infrastructure side coming in, and then the really big debate I think is what happens in the auto market, and that could really bring in some sort of flatlining, a sort of activity in Q4 after what's been a really big drag this year.
So how much is this a story of PBOC liquidity making its way into the economy, and we're seeing the pop there, and how much is this just that people got ahead of themselves with the China slowing down into crisis story?
Well, I think the expectations were that China would be hit a lot worse than it has actually been. You have had sort of reasonable domestic demand, but the interesting thing is the PBOC and the government haven't done, as they keep saying, they haven't done the flood liquidity and they haven't just pushed out bank loans, and they've kept things quite restrained, things like the shadow banking and also the P2P financing, which is where a lot of consumer debt had built up. They've not actually loosened that up, because to be honest, what's keeping the whole economy on the road is actually the property market, where they've allowed some loosening, and that's sort of keeping everything going reasonably well, but they've not done a sort of a huge stimulus. So that's basically keeping things relatively stable at the same time as you have obviously the trade war impact.
Can they afford to delay all this talk of the week? And we're exhausted by the talk of the week, but Miranda, can they just toss this into 2020?
They could. Obviously, the trade war side, they could. If we get this deal in December, it's phase one. This is something that China would have, decided on last year. They would have agreed to something similar, this time last year, and you wouldn't have had to have all this, all the rest of it. But yes, in terms of the longer term issues, in terms of getting to the phase two, then the debate is whether China's ever going to concede to anything as significant as the US wants in terms of removing state ownership and removing state influence and removing all the sort of lot of red lines for China. So yeah, phase one could get signed, but then phase two, that's a longer term issue, and that may have to wait a lot longer.
Well, Miranda, typically what we would think is that if we go into phase two without tackling the big issues, that it could blow up phase one. The reason why some people don't think that movie plays out this time around going into next year is because next year is an election year. Does that change things for you, Miranda?
Well, the thing is, China, being hard on China, can play well. If you get the phase one deal signed, and so therefore the agricultural exports and the LNG benefits that part of the electorate, then that's fine for China and for the US. But in terms of then the bigger scale, so that's sort of the technology, the 5G war, the AI, and a lot of the bigger sort of like state influence, then to be honest, in going into an election, taking a strong stance on that may not actually be that bad if you've already sort of saved a little bit of the economy by doing the phase one deal.
Yeah, Miranda Kerr, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it with High Tongue International. Good morning in the United Kingdom, particularly listening on our London radio. You can hear John Farrow there in the afternoons.
On DAB Digital Radio at 5 p.m. local time.
Very good. He does that. And we really thank Tom. He's near Bristol. He's in I got to get the name right. It's Long Ashton, which is outside of Bristol.
Okay.
So thanks for the dissertation on the Bristol accent.
Okay, we still doing this?
Yeah,
is this the theme? Is this the theme of this morning?
I'm learning the map of your England here. Like I sort of know where Manchester City is.
Are we going to tell everyone about what we're doing in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, we're going to be
our trip over to the United Kingdom.
I'm reading in on the United Kingdom. North Somerset in the Southeast, they were 52.2%.
Oh, a Somerset accent. I can see that suiting.
Oh no, are they different?
Is nice Somerset accent. But it's the same thing.
I look at the Brexit vote, which you, John, were on the morning after the Brexit vote, trying to piece that together. In North Somerset, near Bristol, was 52.2%, like almost the national average.
Like the country. 52 to 48. You're going to do some research ahead of this election?
I am.
Nice.
Chris from Birmingham is going to help me.
Is he?
Probably.
I think Chris from Birmingham's a little bit annoyed with you.
You say as over a pint, right?
You might get a pint thrown over you. I'm not sure whether you'll have a discussion over a pint.
Do a data check and save me here.
Okay, I'll do just that. Equity futures this morning, basically unchanged through much of the session. The S&P 500 down by just a couple of points on the S&P. We're negative 2 points and down by not even 1/10%. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. You are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
And now with the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, thank you very much. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is once again considering a run for president in 2020, with an advisor saying he is concerned the current Democratic contenders will not defeat President Trump. Mr. Bloomberg has not made a final decision on whether to run, but is expected to file to get on the ballot in Alabama's presidential primary, which has an early filing deadline. Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent of Bloomberg Radio. President Trump heads to Atlanta today to launch what his campaign is calling Black Voices for Trump. Protesters in Hong Kong are blaming police for the death of a 22-year-old student who fell off a parking garage last weekend, fueling the 5-month-old unrest. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Time.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Yields higher by 2 basis points, 241 on the 30-year bond, 1.94% on the 10-year yield. Stay with us. Futures, -2. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to spin? We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. We dropped off our Christmas shopping at the hotel. Then it was off to be spellbound at the Theatre Royal Bath. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m, 90% UK coverage.
Teaching shapes lives. Becoming a teacher means a career of opportunities. You could head a subject department or work towards school leadership. And with a minimum starting salary of £24,000 to £30,000, teaching has never been so rewarding. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Starting salary dependent on location.
This winter, why not take the short flight from London to Dublin with Aer Lingus from just $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. From coastal walks to cozy pubs and friendly locals, you'll find so much to enjoy once you're there. Smart takes a Dublin city break. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Terms and conditions apply.
She did it! Her first word! Listen, everyone. Mama. Oh, she's lovely. Mama. Oh, did you hear that?
Oh.
Savings. Savings account.
Teaching your kids how to save may not be this easy, but you can get them learning good habits and skills from an early age, thanks to the range of children's savings accounts from Yorkshire Building Society. Just another example of real help with real life. Find out more at ybs.co.uk.
Here's Taylor Riggs.
C-Trip is the leading online travel agency and the parent of travel sites like Trip.com and Skyscanner. The company provides one-stop travel services such as accommodation and ticket reservations, as well as vacation packages. Despite rapid growth since its start in 1999, the company has seen its shares decline amid tensions like the U.S. trade war and Hong Kong protests. The C-Trip CEO, Jane Sun, spoke to my colleague Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie in Beijing.
Is top-line growth being weighed down by this near-term weakness in the economy?
The Hong Kong-Taiwan situation, yes, it has a negative impact on our top line. But I think these are, one-time kind of thing. So we will see through it and still make a strong investment in the long term.
How would you characterize the impact, the broader impact of the trade war on your business?
I'm very hopeful that the leaders from both countries will have the wisdom to focus on our shared interest. And there are so much things we share together and maximize our shared interest. Only then I think both countries will be benefiting from our collaboration.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 8:17 on Wall Street. Futures are a little changed this morning. Let's go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. U.S. futures remain quiet with the Dow currently up 11 points. S&P futures up or down 2, and NASDAQ futures are lower by 11. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.95%. Gold is down 10, and Shanghai fell 0.5% overnight, while European markets are also trading lower, led by losses in Spain. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 10 o'clock, wholesale inventories and Michigan sentiment. And after the bell last night, Disney beat estimates. Shares are up 6% in the pre-market. Zillow beat estimates. And in the retail space, the Gap is down 10% in the pre-market as the CEO stepped down amid slumping sales. In deal news, DuPont is set to explore a divestiture of its transportation unit. And wrapping things up, TripAdvisor was cut to underweight at JP Morgan after earnings. McDonald's raised to buy at Longbow, and Foot Locker raised to positive over at Susquehanna. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
Bill, thank you. To hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Gets yields up 1.95%. We're in the 2% watch here. John Farrell watching to 3 decimal points. Lisa Abramowitz watching the 10-year yield to 4 decimal points. We can go up that far in a Bloomberg terminal. 1.95% on the yield. Bloomberg surveillance this morning, always brought to you by Invesco. Every day they bring together ideas with technology, data with inspiration, and investors with solutions. Invesco, greater possibilities together. Invesco.com/together. Invesco Distributors Inc. John, this weekend at the Keene household, movie weekend, I'm signing up for exciting. 8 streaming services.
November 12th, that's when Disney Plus comes out. You're going to sign up
I got a free, Iger gave me a free up on that early, like 2 weeks early. I've got Disney Plus, Peacock, Hulu, Netflix, the Abramowitz Network.
What's the Abramowitz Network?
It's, like sort of super good, earthy, super exciting.
Is that Money Undercover on Tuesdays at 1 p.m.?
Just on repeat over and over again.
That's amazing.
Lots of people are rushing into that.
Geetha Raghunathan joining us now, Bloomberg Intelligence media analyst with Disney. That's what we're here to talk about. Disney, the stock up by 6.5% with an earnings beat. And November 12th, they're joining the streaming wars. Geetha, your view on the numbers so far?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, John. So there was a lot to like in Disney's report last night. They're firing on all cylinders. But I think just as we heard Bob Iger speak, there's really a streaming-first mentality with the management. There's a lot of enthusiasm around the Disney Plus launch. This is going to be one of the most affordable streaming services out there in the marketplace, anchored by world-class brands like Marvel, Pixar, Lucas, Nat Geo, and it's really perfect for the 35 million U.S. households with children who want to immerse themselves in the vast world of Disney.
Geetha, I did a long-term vol study of Disney, and I think I can editorialize that they haven't popped like they've popped recently, back pushing 22 years. I mean, this surge, this streaming surge, this Iger surge that we've seen, what does that do to buy, hold, sell? Not your buy, hold, sell, but what does that do to the street? Is it out front because of the pop? Is it ahead of itself?
I don't think it's ahead of itself. So you're absolutely right, Tom. So for the past 4 years, I mean, the stock has been languishing ever since 2015 when they first spoke about the ESPN subscriber losses. And this year's April Investor Day was the real catalyst. Them announcing the service, the distribution partnerships, the content, everything seems to be kind of working in their favor right now. I think in terms of near-term catalysts, of course, the studio is outperforming. But more than anything, I mean, streaming is definitely going to be the number one catalyst. I think in general, the street is expecting about a 10 million subscriber number by the end of this year. Disney itself refused to give any early reads on subscribers. They've only pointed to their longer-term 60 to 90 million Disney Plus subscriber goal, but that's over 5 years. But I think the first reads would be in the first quarter of their fiscal first quarter when if management decides to give any early numbers.
Geetha, can we give you a little bit of research here right now? Lisa, November 21, Frozen 2, do you go to the 6 p.m. show or the 9 p.m. show?
How about the Never show?
Oh, no, come on.
You're going to go see the Frozen 2 in the theater the first time?
Got to pay $48 a ticket or whatever. I mean, how big, Geetha, how big is Frozen 2 to all this?
Oh, it is massive. I mean, if you just heard management yesterday, so they actually reported a 17% increase in the operating income for their park segment. But really, the driver there was not so much the parks, but it was more the merchandise, a 36% increase in Frozen and Toy Story merchandise.
Yeah.
So this is huge.
Well, the Abramowitz boys, you're wearing Elsa and Anna, aren't you?
My older son said to me when Frozen 1 was hot, all the girls love Frozen. You know what my favorite movie is? My favorite movie is Hot. I'm like, all right.
What? What is that?
It's not. He's trying to be contrarian.
This is not appropriate for radio.
No, like Frozen, Hot. It's moving right along.
The point here, seriously, is Frozen 2.
Star Wars is coming out too.
Thank you.
It is, and the trailer is very cool. But what's serious here for Geetha is Frozen 2 moves the needle.
I think that there's also an interesting question about fixed expenses for Disney and how much they're going to bring in versus pay out. There was a story about how the fact they have come to an agreement with Amazon, Samsung, and LG devices in order to stream their service. They already have agreements with Apple and Roku. How much of a drag will that be?
So I think the Amazon deal absolutely adds to their distribution muscle. They've already pointed investors to the fact that there is going to be some upfront costs with the streaming service. I mean, this always happens when you need to build up to scale. So they've pointed to the streaming services not actually bringing in any profits for at least another 3 to 4 years. So 2024 is when Disney Plus breaks even. It could break even earlier if they totally hit the ground running with the subscriber number. So we'll have to wait and watch.
Geetha, always great to get your thoughts. Geetha Ranganathan there, Bloomberg Intelligence media analyst. The film slate from that studio is unbelievable, isn't it? It is unreal.
He has not gotten enough credit. Mr. Iger, unlike a lot of the egos, he really, he's doing his CEO thing, but I would suggest he's just not gotten enough credit for that surge. It's
Tom,
extraordinary.
How many times have you watched Frozen?
Frozen, I think we've probably seen 14 times incomplete, and I've seen segments of it.
14 times?
That's in full. But that doesn't, like Mary Poppins in the 60s when it came out, I think we went to that like 12 times when it was in the theater.
Do you know Let It Go? Do you know all of the words?
Yes, I know it. Are you, Elsie, are you in there?
Carry on, please.
What? Elsa, are you in there?
What is going on?
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Wall Street starts out at new record highs today after the Dow jumped 182 points yesterday. Right now, the Dow futures are only up 3 points. Struggling retailer Sears plans to close 96 more stores. That leaves the company that owns Sears and Kmart with around 180 stores. This latest list of stores slated to close by February, but the going out of business sales start December 2nd. The owner of Sears Transform Company cites a difficult retail environment. It did say that for now it's secured a new cash infusion of around $250 million. Disney has secured a deal to put its coming streaming service Disney Plus on Amazon, Samsung, and LG devices, guaranteeing it'll reach millions of potential subscribers. It already had devices from Apple and Roku on board for the $7 a month service that launches next month. Disney also beat analyst estimates in the latest quarter when it came to earnings. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com. And feel the power. Member FINRA/SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
The lifeblood of Techstar.
It's another Friday afternoon. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and relax with 365 beautiful beaches.
So yes, sir, what would you like to have?
Fly from London Gatwick to Antigua with British Airways from £223 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End, and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
This Sunday on Sky Sports, it's Liverpool versus Manchester City.
We are watching something special.
Will the Reds extend their lead at the top of the table?
The fairy tale goes on.
Or will Pep's side close the gap?
The Premier League at its best.
Get more of the biggest Premier League games on Sky Sports with all 8 channels now just £20 extra a month. Get our limited time offer online. Simply search by Sky Sports. Sky Sports, £20 a month with a new 18-month minimum term contract. Requires Sky TV. Prices may change. Offer ends 10th of November.
At Argos, get them the toys they're dreaming of this Christmas. Save 20% when you spend £20 or more on toys with code TOYS20, including top brands like Peppa Pig and Lego. Enjoy same-day home delivery 7 days a week. With Argos, you're good to go. Offer ends the 12th of November, subject to availability. Exclusions apply. Delivery conditions apply. Order by 6 p.m. 90% UK coverage.
She did it! Her first word! Go on, say it again for Mummy.
Nada. Mama.
Oh.
Savings.
Did you hear that?
Savings account.
Teaching your kids how to save may not be this easy, but you can get them learning good habits and skills from an early age, thanks to the range of children's savings accounts from Yorkshire Building Society. Just another example of real help with real life. Find out more at ybs.co.uk.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. Your economic indicators are brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the 6th straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. As far as the economic data is concerned, we are light on it here in the United States. A little bit later today, 10 a.m. Eastern, you will get University of Michigan sentiment. Look out for that. That's your last last big data point of the week so far. Weighing in on the economic data, I'm pleased to say, joining us right now, Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic, sitting down with Bloomberg's Michael McKee and Alex Steele.
Welcome now, our Bloomberg television and radio listeners, and joining us here for a special conversation is Raphael Bostic, President of the Atlanta Fed. You're the perfect one to help us answer all these questions. You said yesterday that you would probably dissented and voted against an interest rate cut at the last FOMC meeting. Why?
Well, one of the things that we try to do in the 6th District is really get a sense of what's the trajectory of the economy and how much are the risks out there being taken on by businesses and consumers. And in my canvassing of our district and hearing from my directors, we just weren't hearing that in a material way. And so we had already done a fair amount of accommodation. We'd moved twice already. And it was my view that we really should just let that go and just wait and see how it plays out. And if we see that there's more need for accommodation, we could act at that point. We'd already done a lot, and I was willing to just let's see how that plays through the economy.
Well, are you concerned that rates are too low now, that there's an issue with where rates are? With inflation quiescent, what would be the problem?
Well, I think, first of all, I think we are slightly accommodative. And that's fine. I don't think that our position now is likely to spark the economy to get into an overheated mode where we might expect there to be some weakening in response to that. I worry a lot about the policy space that we have. We're at 1.5 to 1 3/4. That's not a lot of space. When you think historically what responses have been in the recessionary to a recession, we don't have that much space. And so I want to make sure that when we do deploy our tools, they're deployed to maximum effect in a way that leaves us with policy options moving forward.
You mentioned the R word, recession, and Alex was just saying, and you're the perfect one to answer the question, there seems to be a change in mood, certainly on Wall Street, and the idea of downturn being priced out now, people are getting optimistic. Have you seen that kind of change on the ground in your district, or did Wall Street see something that the businessmen you talked to didn't see?
So my business contacts have been consistent through this entire year. The consumer's been solid. Their revenues have been solid. Their profits have been pretty stable. Actually, for many, it's more than what they expected at the beginning of this year. And what they've told me is that they're expecting that to continue on into 2020. So I've not really heard much of a change in perspective. They've always been in that positive space, and that's pretty much what we're expecting moving forward.
And to add on to that, to the speech you gave yesterday, we have a quote from it that sort of encapsulates that. It said, trade policies impacting the business sector as a whole remains modest, slowing capital expenditures by a few percentage points and leading to a small change in overall employment. So, like you were saying, it's not really doing that much. So walk me through what higher yields do then, because we freak out. Like when we go from, 1.3 to 1.8 and there's lots of volatility, Wall Street, the market, we freak out. What does it mean for you?
Well, for me and for many businesses, I think they take a longer view. So this day-to-day volatility is not stuff that really affects them because it's not what's driving their consumers when they walk into their stores to buy goods. So I think that you take a longer arc, and when you see the longer arc, the risks, they're out there. There's uncertainty that's out there. Much of it hasn't actually been resolved in ways so that we know what the impacts are. And what I'm hearing from businesses is that they understand their uncertainties, that it's a wide set of them. So they're making contingency plans. They're starting to think about diversifying supply chains and ways to get goods to market. But it's not with a level of panic or consternation that I've heard articulated in kind of this context.
Well, when you look at the uncertainty out there, and everybody blames it on the trade wars and things like that, are companies saying that they need to expand, but they're afraid to, or are they pretty much comfortable with the resources, the supply they have to meet demand?
I think it's more the latter. So for many businesses, 2018 was a record year in terms of performance. And so staying at a record level is not a bad thing. And so I think that staying at this level is something that businesses would be comfortable with. Of course, if there were opportunities to grow and do things that were pressing, they would want to do that. But in that context, the biggest constraint that I'm hearing them say is finding quality labor. finding workers. The labor market is tight, and they're looking for ways to get the right people into positions so they can take advantage of opportunities.
If you're watching Bloomberg Television or listening to Bloomberg Radio, we want to welcome you. We're speaking with Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic. Where is the labor market most tight? What sectors?
So I would say not in sectors. I would say at segments of the labor market. So one of the things that we are hearing a lot of is trying to get entry-level workers, like in restaurants or like, has become extremely competitive. And so businesses are changing their screening requirements. Drug tests, in some sense, are being dropped. Looking at prison records is being dropped. We even heard of a restaurateur who is hiring you, and you started on the same day. So they're getting very aggressive in terms of trying to get that entry-level worker, and the wage pressures for that segment are significant. Certainly, we know that engineers, tech people, nurses, places where either the economy is super strong for that and looking for those sorts of workers, or where we know we have shortages of workers, in the case of nurses, for example, or truck drivers, we're seeing definite competition, and that's showing up in wages as well.
Well, the question, though, is why aren't wages overall rising given where we are with unemployment? Is there a lot of extra slack out there, or have we just gotten used to a low-wage environment?
So I think it's actually a combination of a number of factors. When I first started this job 2.5 years ago, I asked this question. I was a new guy. I hadn't talked to businesses, so I was like, well, we got to find out why this is happening. Because if you're complaining about shortage of workers, obviously just pay them more. You'll compete better. And some of them said, look, I remember 7 years ago when I had to lay off a third of my staff. That was so painful. I'm going to be very reticent to quickly take people on that way. Others said that, look, today's workers, many of them aren't looking for wages. They're looking for flexibility in the work schedule. They're looking to bring their pet to work. They're looking for a lot of different things to allow.
Bring their pet to work?
Oh, yeah.
That's a thing?
You have your dog under the...
Bring your, you got a cat?
I do have a cat. How did you know? I'm totally a cat person.
I'm a cat person too, so we have that in
you guys, yeah.
But yeah, so finding ways to make people work in their comfortable environment, and that's something that's happened a lot as well. A third is on the consumer side. So consumers also remember from the Great Recession that the three desks next to them used to have people in it, and now they don't anymore. So their willingness to push wages has actually changed a lot as well. Now that was 10 years ago, almost, actually more than 10 years ago at the beginning. And what's happening is that psychology. The further away you get, the more you get into a more regular type of mindset, a more historically normal mindset. And so what we're seeing now is we're seeing pretty significant, if you look at our wage tracker that we have on our website, you're seeing significant jumps in wages for people who are changing jobs, right? So this notion that you're starting to get some energy in the churn of the labor force, that's an important sign that things are actually not so irregular, and that we may be getting back into a more normal phase.
In this political season, there's a lot of talk about two Americas and how some are doing really well, particularly urban areas. You've got some big urban areas in your district: Atlanta, Miami, Tampa, yes. Birmingham, and you've got some very poor areas. Are there two Americas? Do people see things differently as you travel around your district?
Question.
There are definitely multiple Americas, right? So, as I've gone around, and our district is incredibly diverse. We have the big places. We got a lot of smaller places. If you look at the map, most of my area is not the big cities. It's smaller towns, it's rural, it's agricultural, and there are places, many of them used to have like a mill that used to employ a lot of workers, but as the economy has evolved, we've become more global, those things have disappeared. And so you go to places where, like South Georgia, or northern Alabama, northwestern Alabama, or the eastern half of Tennessee, once you get past Chattanooga and the like, you see places where they're not experiencing 3% growth. And they've got population stagnation, and their demographics are aging very rapidly. And they're facing a different kind of challenge than you face in Nashville or in Midtown Atlanta, where my bank is. And so we try to talk about we talk to them differently about the economy and about what things they need. What are the skills that might be required for being competitive in the workforce of tomorrow? How do you think about the region to really project that region and be in the mind of employers that are looking for that next place to open? And so it's a very different conversation than we have in some of the hot places where it's, how do you preserve affordability and access to neighborhoods and getting amenities more evenly spread across the area.
We're talking with Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic on Bloomberg Television and Radio Worldwide. What do you do about that then? How do you, can you help these other areas, not necessarily the Fed, but can they be helped with economic policies, or have we moved on to a time period where you have to live in the bigger cities if you want to see economic growth?
So I actually think you can do something about this. So one is, let's make sure that the people who are living in these places that have stagnated actually know where the opportunities are. One of the senses that I've had is there's so much discussion about this global economy, things are changing, and in many instances it just stops there. And it doesn't say, well, change actually imposes costs, but it also brings opportunities, and you can position yourself to take advantage of those opportunities. I go to a lot of places, and they don't know what the opportunities are. They've not had people have that conversation with them. So that's the first thing, because there are things that, like these like automation, all these new developments, jobs come with them. Those jobs have a different set of skills, and we need to make sure that they understand what those skills are. And then that we also have pipelines of pathways so they can get those skills. Because, historically in the U.S., we've always had, technological disruption. So everybody used to be a farmer. Technology came and we don't need farmers. But in those days, we don't need as many farmers. In those days, the skills that you needed to do farming weren't so different than the skills you needed to work in a factory. Today, the skills you need to do many of the jobs that are being disrupted out are different. And so we need to have robust and mature training programs and facilities to allow people to get those skills.
Is that anything that you can do?
Well, we don't do that at the Fed.
It sounds like that has to be all the government.
It needs to be institutional. It needs to be institutionalized. Sometimes that will be the public sector, the government. Other times it will be the private sector. So I had a director from my New Orleans branch. She ran a hospital. She said, we don't have enough nurses. She set up a school. So what we're seeing is many different blends. Private sector, public-private partnerships, nonprofits can get involved. And so one of the things that we try to do when we go around is really try to understand what's in that community that can come together to be the building blocks for those strategies to make that change.
Well, let's bring it back to monetary policy. Chairman Powell has talked about leaving rates low to help those people out as much as possible to get the expansion into the corners of the economy. Where would you like to see, how comfortable are you, let me put it this way, with interest rates where they are, and how long would you be able to leave them there in order for that to happen?
Well, first of all, I think it's really great that the chair is willing to talk about the distributional impacts of monetary policy and the fact that there might be distributional impacts. We know that in economic cycles, there are certain segments of our population that are the last ones to benefit. And so the longer that you can have a growth cycle, the more possibilities and opportunities there are for that group to become part of the labor force and labor market. My biggest concern is that if you run low and the market gets too hot, almost every time we get to a place where the market gets too hot, the labor market gets too tight, that's usually a signal that businesses are taking risks. And we often will find that there'll be a recession that comes after that. And when that happens, it is often the case that the last ones in are the first ones out. So the benefits wind up not being as great. So one of the things I'm hoping for is let's get sustainable growth. Let's have this go long. Let's have it go in a steady way, that we don't get to an overheating position, so that when we get those new jobs, they're jobs that will sustain. Now, for me, that's sort of part and parcel of what we're trying to do writ large. And my hope is that we're not going to see those signs of overheating. We're not going to see pockets of the economy where it looks like there's significant risk-taking that's building up that might spill over into a broader economic experience or event. So that's kind of where we are right now, where my head is at.
All Our Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic, thank you so much. It was really great to spend this time with you. And for all of our Bloomberg television and radio listeners, thanks for joining us. That was Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic.
Alex Steele there alongside Michael McKee and the Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic. A really interesting conversation. Another Fed official, Tom, really talking up the U.S. economy and more specifically the U.S. labor market.
Yeah, but just sort of creating this narrow landing, right? We are slightly accommodative and then also trying to say that the U.S. economy is well, except they don't have that much space in a downturn, so threading that needle.
And I want to point out to our global audience, we thank you all, particularly the huge email today from the United Kingdom, that every president is different. There are governors in Washington, and we talked to Charles Evans. He is, to an extent, talking the Chicago book versus, John, what we just saw from Raphael Bostic in an Atlanta book, which is a really different economy.
Really pleased to say that Ira Jersey is standing by. He's been listening to that conversation as well from Bloomberg Intelligence. He joins us at Princeton on the phone. Ira, great to have you with us. Let's talk about that. We're seeing significant pay jumps for people changing jobs. This coming from Raphael Bostic.
That's a big deal.
We're seeing competition, and that's showing up in wages. That's another Fed official that sounds pretty bullish on the labor market in America. Is that your take, Ira?
Yeah, I think that was his take. Remember, he was a little measured, however, mentioning that not everyone is being pulled along and that there's, these pockets of places, particularly outside of some of the cities within his district. And I think the point that I think Lisa just made it is that, different districts have significantly different economies, right? So when you look around the country, there's, we have one monetary policy for the whole country, but there's a lot of different economies because the economy, obviously, in places like Michigan might be significantly different than the economy of Georgia, right? And so when you think about the whole economy, there, the Southeast is generally doing much better than, say, the Upper Midwest, and that's been the case for the better part of 2 decades now. But again, they can only have one monetary policy. So I think he was pretty measured, and it sounds like, at least monetary policy-wise, he agrees with staying on hold at least for the time being.
So threading that needle, we were talking about the idea that the U.S. economy is doing really well, the workers in a good spot, and yet the risks are to the downside. Why are the risks still to the downside?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think one is there is somewhat of a displacement of workers. I think President Bostic kind of poo-pooed that a little bit, saying that you have to create job training programs, and there's all of these things that both businesses and government maybe needs to do to help those workers that are being left behind. But I also think that it's just the fragility of the kind of the global economic framework where people are worried, right? There is a certain amount of sentiment that both consumers and businesses have because of things like the trade tensions that have recently eased. But, in the back of people's minds, it's, okay, are we going to continue to have this type of very toxic global economic environment that might impact the U.S. economy? So, I think that they have to say that, too, because they're not seeing the typical type of wage gains and inflationary impulse that you should be getting when employment's as low as it is and when you're very late in or at least this far along in an economic cycle.
Well, that's, Ira, what I wanted to talk about with you, where we are in the cycle. That's what is important for a lot of market participants and investors right now. We caught up with RBC's Tom Porcelli earlier in the week, and he talked about confusing and failing to draw a distinction between full employment and signs of full employment and a cyclical peak in labour market conditions. How important is that debate at the moment, Ira?
Yeah, well, I think that's very important for markets in particular, because when you see, a bit of a slip in the number of jobs being created, although wages still have been rising at an okay clip, I think when you get a kind of an upward impulse in things like the labor market, that's going to create some of the optimism that we're seeing, certainly in the bond market over the last couple of days, right? Where with trade tensions not very good, when you saw last week, the decent jobs numbers from October, those all feed into this idea that, hey, okay, the economy's not great, but it's also not going to fall out of bed. So therefore, 10-year yields shouldn't be at 1.5%. They should be closer to 2 or 2.1%, which is the fair value for our model right now.
Ira, I'd love to get your sense on something a little bit different. Can we shift gears? Or Tom, were you going to?
Please, I'm all shift. It's Friday.
You're all shift?
You're not going to accents.
Don't ask for his permission.
Okay, well, I want to make sure that we didn't have more on Fed.
What?
I think,
Never.
yeah, okay, but I want to get your sense, Ira Jersey, Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist, on the sell-off we're seeing that's ongoing. And I will just say, we are seeing yields take a leg higher, 10-year yields in the U.S. right now. What do you make of this sell-off?
Yeah, so I think we were very rich because the market was concerned about trade tensions, about global economic conditions falling out of bed, and now just in the last 2 weeks we basically said, okay, well maybe the economy is not as bad as we feared, and therefore we can sell off. So we were very rich for a long period of time. We also yesterday broke a very important technical level, and as you know, once you break these important technical levels, there's a lot of participants who have stop losses who were long the market. They wind up getting out of those positions, and you can see outsized moves very quickly, and I think that's what we had yesterday.
One of the values of Ira Jersey, and this is brilliant, is the equity trading characteristics that are underappreciated in the bond market. So let's translate this, Ira. Price is lower, yield is higher, and just like a bet on the stock market, you get convexity when you go, oops, I was wrong. Is there a positioning right now where with price lower and yield higher, there are a lot of people going, oops, I was wrong?
Yeah, so there's a number. So when you look at positioning, for example, in Treasury futures, asset managers have been very long Treasury futures. And
what does that mean? Translate. Come on, Ira.
Who are you
talking to, Ira?
Basically real money people being, pessimistic, being long interest rates, being long Treasury market, and if those people need to get out, wind up selling those positions, you wind up getting outsized moves, which I think is what we had. And when we talk about the piece that we put out today that's available on the Bloomberg terminal.
Oh, listen. What is this, a sales program?
Here. But you mentioned it, Tom. So the equity market doesn't necessarily have to move a lot higher, I think, to get interest rates even to move higher still. And the reason for that is that the equity market sentiment right now is continuing to get better and better. We keep on making new highs on the S&P 500, and if you can't do that forever without the rates market having to selling off a little bit more.
So to the people watching the Abramowitz Hour this weekend, folks, look for that, a 3-hour special on Sunday evening about the bond market. Do we have enough entrenched trade oomph where we have so-called convexity that drives us to a 2.00% yield? Is there enough of an oomph just to get us there on that, or do we get there on more fundamentals?
Well, I think there is both technical and fundamentals, but yeah, the technicals can get us to 2% easily, and I think even further.
There you go.
So one of the things we have to think about is, where are things like mortgage trades, right? So a lot of people who own mortgages, they hedge their interest rate exposure, and if interest rates are rallying, they might be under hedging that because they don't want to waste their carry, kind of their ammunition.
So they got to go in here now and re-hedge, right?
That's right, re-hedge and wind up selling a bit, and I think so that's part of the technical situation that's going on. Right?
Folks, that's a window into the real Ira Jersey. When he comes on with us, he dumbs it down to Tom Keene level, but that's a little window, Lisa, into the real world of Ira Jersey.
Yeah, and we'll be delving into that in our 24-hour special on bond yields, which we're doing this weekend. But Ira Jersey, I do want to sort of talk about that magic number, the 2.5% figure on 10-year Treasury yields that people point to as the tipping point for it to bleed into the equity rally and dampen it. And I'm wondering how quickly you think we could get to that 2.5% level.
I think it's going to be harder to get to 2.5 than it is to get to, to kind of stabilize under 2.25. So the range that we think that we'll be in, broadly speaking, I think that the market's trying to find the top end of a new range. I think it will be above 2%, probably about 2.15%. So call it 186 to 215 on the 10-year Treasury yield, where we were there earlier this year, and I think we're falling back into that range now, at least until we get a hint that something like inflation inflation expectations are going to go up a lot. So in a lot of this move that we've seen over the last couple of the last week or so, most of it has not been an inflation expectation. So you look at the Treasury inflation protected securities market, it's still saying that for the next 10 years, inflation's only going to be 1.7%. Yeah. Meanwhile, real yield, so this is the yield that investors demand above inflation compensation, has gone up about 30 basis points, so 0.3%. So it's really this idea that we're going to get more volatility in the market and we're going to have a bit stronger growth, but still not a lot of inflation. And I think that can only go so far without having an inflationary impulse higher. So to get above 2.25% and to get to that 2.5%, you need inflation expectations to go up, and inflation expectations would not necessarily be good for equities.
How much should we be watching yields in Japan and Europe right now to really get a sense of what's driving things in the U.S., given the fact that we're seeing that negative yielding universe shrink to the lowest since June? In other words, yields are turning positive.
Yeah, well, global domestic developed market rates, tend to be like German yields, Japanese yields, and U.S. yields tend to be relatively correlated on a day-by-day basis. So we look a little bit at that. I mean, when you look at what's gone on in Germany, for example, yields there have gone from negative 70 basis points to negative 20 basis points. So, they're still negative, and like you mentioned, the universe of negative yields is less. But more importantly, it's that delta, that move that from the kind of extreme lows up toward not quite as negative yielding debt that winds up mattering. And I think that the latest move, though, I think has been more U.S. driven, really, than it has been European or Japanese driven.
Ira Jersey, thank you so much. With Bloomberg Fixed Income, just terrific coverage, particularly strong in the last number of months on this repo debate, which we addressed briefly with Charles Evans in Chicago earlier this week. Lisa, I look at the whole, I like swirl's the right word, a fixed income market, and is it safe to say nobody really saw this move coming? Higher yields? I think it's sort of a surprise.
I think it is a surprise because the consensus trade was duration. And you saw that throughout.
What does that mean? That means they were buying long to go for lower yields, right?
They were buying long-dated government bonds because they wanted safety. They wanted something to stuff in their mattresses. And now there is a question, and actually I was looking at ETF flows in TLT, which is a 20-plus year ETF focused on treasuries. Saw its biggest one-week withdrawal since the summer.
Is a TLT ETF, this is a 20-year plus duration. Can I state that that's the roulette wheel of the bond market? If you're going to make a bet on the interest rates, that's just an easy, convenient way to play it.
Yes. I guess roulette wheel is one way to play it, is one way to talk about it. The question I have, though, is that given the fact that there are all these pensions and they're looking to lock in liabilities, I mean, there is that bid out there, but the fact that they've had almost $1 billion of withdrawals over the past week is compelling at a time without inflation, really.
Okay, well, very good. Futures at -3 down, futures flat. The VIX showing the quiet 12.88. Not quite in the yield market. Ira Jersey driving the 10-year yield, a higher yield. 1.95%. This is Bloomberg.
It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to see spectacular coral reefs and white sand beaches. Fly from London Gatwick to Mauritius with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £949 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Ladies and gents, may I introduce a magical number? 25! Oh yes, 25 UK millionaires guaranteed in tonight's Euro Millions.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over. London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and Be Unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Bloomberg Surveillance, Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. Thank you for being with us. Lots to talk about this morning. Sort of a Friday with a jumble of news. Lots of international relations news in the market. I'm going to call it quieter. Interesting earnings. We'll do that with David Wilson here in a moment. But the backdrop is yields grinding higher, 195 in the 10-year yield. I guess I'm on the 2% watch. John Farrell says I should be on the 2% watch, and confirming that is yen weaker, 109.35. Stephen Stanley in earlier with Amherst Pierpont talking up a more substantial GDP number, and Lisa Abramowitz here for Paul. And Lisa, I would suggest no one's framing a Steve Stanley economy above 2.5% growth over the next number of quarters.
Right. No one is doing that. Although the mood music is shifting to the more
Stanley
positive
world.
Yes, it is, and I think that's a notable development. Also notable, though, that yields are rising much faster than any kind of movement in equities right now.
We'll talk to Margaret Brennan here on the Going On in Washington. But right now, the snow glows white on the mountain tonight. Not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of David Wilson, and it looks like Lisa's the queen. How was that, David? Frozen 2, upcoming. Did that come up in the earnings call?
I like that. Can I
Did that come up on the earnings call of Disney?
Well, let me check the transcript of the earnings call since you brought it up, Tom, which I can do on my trusty Bloomberg terminal.
I mean, it's a mega thing coming up for them. And Geetha was on with us running all of our media coverage, Geetha Ranganathan, and she was adamant Frozen 2 moves the needle for Mr. Iger.
I'm sure it does, but you want to talk about what's going to move the needle?
Big.
Disney Plus.
Yeah.
The streaming service.
How much is the
starts
stock up?
Next week. Disney's up 6% in early trading. Well, the third quarter earnings beat analyst average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. And on top of that, Disney reached an agreement for Amazon.com, Samsung, and LG to carry Disney Plus on their respective devices. So more distribution for the service. Then you have Gap. Not pretty, down about 8%. The apparel retailer fired CEO Art Peck after he failed to revive sales growth. Now, Peck's interim successor is Chairman Robert Fisher, the son of founders Don and Doris Fisher. Gap put out preliminary results for the fiscal third quarter, and they trailed estimates.
We'll talk about this in 17 minutes here on Bloomberg Surveillance. David?
Activision Blizzard's down 2%. The video game maker's fourth quarter profit and revenue forecast trail projections. Activision said it plans to spend more on marketing. They're trying to bring in more game players and have them spend more time with their products. Most active stock in early trading, AXA Equitable, down about 1%.
This is insurance, right?
Indeed it is. France's AXA sold about 3/4 of its controlling stake to Goldman Sachs. The sale would be valued at $3.2 billion at yesterday's closing price. AXA's holding was reduced to less than 10%.
Okay.
And back on earnings, Monster Beverage up 4.5%. The energy drink maker's third quarter earnings and sales beat the average estimates. Zillow Group, the real estate company, up 10%, or maybe 10.5%, depending on which class of stock you look at. Third quarter revenue beat estimates as its home flipping business picked up. Ubiquity, maker of wireless network equipment, up 10%. Fiscal first quarter profit and sales were higher than projections. Guardant Health, a cancer testing company, up 7.5%. They have a narrower third quarter loss and higher revenue than analysts expected. Yelp's up 10.5%. The consumer review service had revenue for the third quarter that top projections, though earnings came up short. We've got a couple of pretty substantial declines to talk about. Teradata down 25.5%.
What do they do? I don't know that name.
Database management. That's their business.
Does that clear it up, Tom?
Yeah. Third quarter results trailed estimates, and fourth quarter forecasts were far below projections. Teradata CEO Oliver Ratzesberger quit after leading the company for less than a year. And then there's Anaptys Bio, down 73%. The drug developer's proposed treatment for a skin condition called atopic dermatitis failed in a mid-stage study. Now, there's another company, Dermira, that's working on a competing treatment, and that stock is up about 29%.
It's amazing. David Wilson, is the earnings season done? Are you done
It's
yesterday?
Pretty much done.
Yeah.
You got media companies next week, and then the retailers who typical fiscal quarter is a month behind the calendar.
Yeah, okay. David Wilson, thank you so much, and really greatly appreciate it. It was exciting the last couple of weeks. Basic trend, Lisa, here has been better earnings, I would suggest, than the gloom of X number of weeks ago.
Yes, although lost in that is that these companies were jumping over a very low hurdle, and
huge low hurdle, yes.
Earnings growth is poised to be the lowest in the fourth quarter.
Do you have a number on that, roughly? I haven't seen a number.
0.8%. That is the estimate on Wall Street. That is the expectation for fourth quarter earnings growth. That would be the lowest in 4 years, and it's downgraded by these analysts after they saw the results and the forecast. It's been downgraded since more than 7% as recently as in June. The same analysts. I'm just saying that. Honestly, I think that it's important to sort of put into perspective the 75% of companies that beat analyst expectations. Just get a sense of how low the expectations were, and the earnings growth really isn't accelerating.
Yeah, and you see it here, folks. Again, the shock of 3,085 SPX with futures flat this morning. I get that. Dow. I'm not on the 28,000 watch, 27,674. But Lisa, starting in 2 hours will be that writing of what I call the Friday gloom notes, which is that's the day the gloom comes out. And it's just, talked to John Golub earlier of Credit Suisse. I mean, we make jokes about it because it's showbiz and we got to keep people entertained. The amount of people that have not participated in this index move is just breathtaking.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Well, it is true. Right now, Margaret Brennan joins us. Of course, you know her from Face the Nation on CBS. She had a lineup, and then the story changed. Margaret Brennan joins us now, of course, working for Bloomberg years ago. So, Margaret, what will you discuss on Face the Nation this Sunday morning?
Well, we will talk about Mike Bloomberg shaking up the Democratic race potentially here if he follows through on this filing and actually does jump in. That has certainly, turned the race on its head. We'll also talk about the impeachment inquiry. Public hearings begin this week. So what's happening behind closed doors now will be on the television cameras and moving us fully into the political fight ahead.
Your distributive team of CBS, of course, spread out all over the nation. And what is the responses you hear from them since about 7 p.m. last night? I mean, how does CBS drive forward this conversation on a new Democratic race?
This is something, look, we've been to the brink and back before with Mike Bloomberg, flirting with running for president. This time it seems he's going further than he has before, and we know that filing in Alabama in particular, fairly easy to move quickly and get on that ballot. So this has shaken up. You saw right out of the gate Senator Elizabeth Warren, who Bloomberg has been clear he's not a fan of her wealth tax and some of her approaches. Senator Harris, he was also critical of when I interviewed him last Monday, particularly on her idea of using executive action to enact gun control. So it will be shaping the conversation and the agenda for the Democratic Party, even if he doesn't follow through as a candidate in this race. But I think it's going to be really interesting. Mike Bloomberg said in the past he thought he'd peel votes away from Joe Biden, therefore wasn't running. Does he actually do that, or does he actually provide some buttress to that centrist Democratic platform that some feel is being pulled too far to the left?
Very good, Margaret Brennan. Thank you so much. See Margaret Brennan, CBS Television Network. You can see Face the Nation on Sunday morning. Always interesting conversation. You can hear Face the Nation on Bloomberg Radio Sunday at 2 p.m. in New York, Washington, D.C., and now Bloomberg 106.1. Boston Newburyport. Face the Nation this Sunday at 2. We do that on Bloomberg Radio, and as I have said for years, we must state that Mr. Bloomberg is a principal owner of Bloomberg LP and, of course, this Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television Network as well. Futures at -3, Dow futures flat with the VIX under 13, 12.82 on a Friday setup here with a quiet tape. Couple oddities that are out there. Sterling quietly has come in over the weekend. It is range bound, but seeing sterling go off 130 weaker to 128.06 maybe speaks to the election tendencies, those new election news flows within the United Kingdom. Ms. Sturgeon up in Scotland speaking about 2 hours ago, beginning to advance an S&P view on Scotland as they look at leave and remain and what's going on, all centered on London as well. Another story here showing the risk on feel, 109.32 on yen. If you're not keeping score at home, a 107, 108, 109.32 really indicates a weaker Japanese yen, which can give comfort to those looking for higher equity prices. At least that's the way the theory book went when Michael Barr studied economics, finance, and investment years ago. To yield 1.94% as well. Again, futures at -3, Dow futures at -2. This is Bloomberg.
Now for a 1 hour special on bond yields, we have our own Michael Barr. Michael.
Complete with Abacus. Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you very much, Tom. House Democrats released transcripts of the closed-door testimony of another key witness. George Kent, a career State Department diplomat, said in his testimony, President Trump wanted nothing less than for the Ukrainian president to go to the microphones and say, investigations, Biden and Clinton. Next week, Kent will return to Capitol Hill. He'll join William Taylor, a top diplomat in Ukraine, in the first of the televised impeachment hearings set to begin Wednesday. Protesters in Hong Kong are blaming police for the death of a 22-year-old student who fell off a parking garage last weekend, fueling the 5-month-old unrest. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree has been cut and will be installed in front of the ice skating rink this weekend. The Norway spruce was cut from the yard of a home in Florida, New York. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Talk.
The seasons are upon us, Michael Barr. Soon, out I'll go with that little steel puppy I've got. Central Park. Find a Christmas bush.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked common?
We just got back from a beautiful city break in Bath. Midweek is the perfect time to beat the crowds. Just an hour and a half by train from London. It was so relaxing. We headed straight for Bath Christmas Market. Oh, I can still smell the roasted chestnuts and mulled wine from the chalets. Next, we donned our skates for Bath on Ice. I'm a natural. Didn't have to hold on to anything or anyone. There's so much to do in Bath. I'm already planning my next trip.
Discover the magic of Bath this Christmas. Plan ahead at visitbath.co.uk/Christmas.
It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Ladies and gentlemen, behold the world's most fantastical, sensational number. 83 million. Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £83 million.
Euro Millions, celebrating 25 years of the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Spot a bargain in the Debenhams Spectacular event. Up to 30% off throughout the store and up to 15% off beauty and fragrance. Shop now in store and at debenhams.com.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the new Audi A4 S-Line, which you can now have from £359 per month, £2,154 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 48-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status, damage charges may apply, no ownership. Ordered by 31st of December 2019 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services, visit audi.co.uk.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Taylor Riggs.
What can be done to preserve utility grids from the effects of climate change? Our next guest is working on that very question. It is Ashley Phillipshin, and she is the project leader for Grid Resilience and Intelligence Platform, aka GRIP. So Ashley, great to have you. And you were talking about how you were finally in year 2 of 3 of this project.
Yes.
Over that time period, what have been some of these major challenges that we're confronting?
So unfortunately, wildfires, here on the West Coast have become pretty regular, just like the seasons, and same thing on the East Coast. We're having, regular hurricanes that are, increasing in power, and we have to learn how to deal with these. How can we have a more flexible, adaptable grid? The grid infrastructure is some of the oldest legacy infrastructure that we've had in the U.S., and so trying to figure out ways to essentially have new tools and solutions in our toolbox, like AI, like machine learning, that can help anticipate, absorb, and recover from some of these grid events.
So walk me through some of the solutions that you found so far.
We're looking at things like predictive analytics. So how can we look at actually figuring out where crews should be placed in advance of a wind event? In our absorption use case, we're trying to use a method called virtual islanding that actually uses machine learning to figure out how can we do power balancing with water heaters, electric vehicles, solar inverters.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and the Bloomberg Futures Report brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at IBKR.com/CME Mini. And U.S. futures extending their declines. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are down about 5 points. Dow futures down 6. NASDAQ futures down 19. The DAX in Germany's down 1/3%. 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds. Yields 1.93%. And the yield on the 2-year 1.67%. NYMEX crude oil down 1.6% or 94 cents at $56.21 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.3% or $3.90 at $14.62.40 an ounce. The euro 1.1026 against the dollar. British pound 1.2811, and the yen is at 109.32. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
Good morning, everyone. That pause there was for me to look at the Gap website to see what I don't want. Sarah Halsek joins Lisa Bramowitz at me right now.
Actually, do you want people to actually know what the pause was? For you to dance to the music.
Dance into the music.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting over here.
They saw that worldwide.
Happy Friday.
Sarah Halsek with us, always always insightful on luxury, and now we go downscale to Gap. Sarah, I'm going to cut to the chase. Lisa and I, unfortunately, have to clothe offspring as well. Gap just seems so behind. Help me here, Lisa. Zara, Uniqlo, H&M. There's 6 others.
Old Navy, even, which they already spun off.
I thought it was Old Navy. No?
Well, you've got to go to Target before you go to Old Navy.
What is going on here, Sarah, with Gap? I mean, it's the land of beige, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's why ultimately Peck had to go. He came into this job in early 2015, so it's been nearly 5 years. That's a really long time to mount a turnaround and stage improvement in this business, and he was just perpetually unable to do so. He was never able to get these 3 brands, Old Navy, Gap, and Banana Republic, firing on all cylinders at once. So when he first arrived, there were a lot of issues with fit and fashion. He claimed that those were fixed. They weren't. Banana Republic had this issue where they hired a really sort of trendy-oriented designer who wasn't creating the sort of classic work-oriented pieces that customer was looking for. That problem was solved. Then problems with inventory emerged. It was just a game of whack-a-mole. He never could get these brands running effectively at the same time.
That takes vision. Do you need vision at that price point?
Yes, I think you absolutely do. And I think that, to your point, that's something that Zara does really, really well. When they talk about their customer, they still talk about giving them fashion, giving them inspiration. And I think that's something Gap hasn't been doing. They have really just come to rely on these 40% off your purchase coupons that they just offer you basically every single day. And so discounting is basically the only thing that people associate with that brand anymore.
Which I like, by the way. I like the discounting, personally.
Sure, everybody likes to feel like they're getting a good deal, but if that's the only thing you're known for...
Ladies, what I dropped last weekend at Zara, Afterthought was ready to go, and there was some dad guilt moment. So, Lisa, I had to order 4 things from Zara, and I was apoplectic over it. I thought we'd eat saltine crackers for the next 10 days. It came to $168. I was like, can we do this more often?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a combination of snazzy corduroy overalls that every, young girl wants, and a price point where I go, yes.
Well, that's the question, right? I mean, 40% coupons, can Gap get away from that?
Perhaps under new leadership, but it's going to take a lot of work at this point because this has been a crutch for basically since the recession was when they started doing this extremely heavy discounting. And clearly at that time period, you could see why it was necessary to get people off the sidelines and open their wallets, but they've never been able to get away from it. And I do think that fixing the fashion is ultimately going to be the ticket to that. And look, Art Peck early in his tenure made the decision to get rid of creative directors at both Gap and Banana Republic.
Ah, really?
Yeah, so he got rid of both the people who are in those jobs and the job itself. That's right. And so I feel like there's sort of been this vacuum in terms of what is the aesthetic, what is the merchandising vision for these brands.
I can see Abramowitz getting the resume out right now.
Yeah, I'm definitely key candidate for the creative director there. What's Gap's identity now?
So I think it should end up being able to, the Gap brand should be all-American classic fashion. The Banana Republic brand should be for women who still have to wear a suit to the office every day.
But isn't that J. Crew? Isn't that Banana Republic?
So J. Crew, of course, is having great struggles of its own, right? That's why it's having to IPO Madewell to, generate some cash to figure out how to court that woman. I think there's a real white space in office-appropriate clothes. I think everybody seeing the success of H&M and Zara really started chasing casual wear aimed at a 20-something customer or a teenager.
Yeah, well,
and there's not much out there for women who have more disposable.
Sarah, on radio today, I can assure you that in this radio room, as I'm dressed to the nines, Abramowitz is so away from office appropriate on her way to the weekends.
All right, okay, fair point. Maybe not. But that actually raises a good point. What is office appropriate today in an era when so many people are wearing yoga pants?
Right. So I think that's also part of the reason why a lot of retailers have moved away from, business formal attire is they see offices are getting more casual and they think there's not a market for that. Judging from my inbox covering retail for the last 5 years, I think there is a market for that. I think that there are a lot of women who still feel like T-shirt is not appropriate for the office. Maybe they don't need a full suit. But there's just really been a dearth of options out there for them. Chico's, which is the corporate parent of White House Black Market, and the eponymous brand has also been super struggling. There's just not a lot out there for women in their 30s and 40s.
Gap 10-year track record, 0% per year. What I know, Sarah, thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Lisa, I am so primed to be wearing party-ready metallics from Banana Republic.
Party-ready metallics. I would pay so much to see you wearing a party-ready metallic suit with a matching party-ready metallic bow tie.
Their free cash flow is a train wreck. I mean, it's not, Uber-like, but it's not pretty.
Well, it raises a question. What is Gap's identity? It used to be the staple. It used to be the T-shirts, the jeans when I was...
How can you not have a creative director at a national brand? I just don't understand that. I had no idea they had a creative director.
Well, they need to find their identity, I suppose.
Sarah Alsek always...
Does this mean that we're not going to get 40% coupons anymore?
No, we are so far off our 40% coupons. Futures at -5, Dow futures at -13. Stay with us worldwide. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Facebook's move fast and break things culture could come back to bite the social network. It seems instant messages from a half dozen years ago or more show workers irritated by having been brushed off by senior managers, including CEO Mark Zuckerberg, when they repeatedly tried to report things that would hurt competition, policies that would have cut off competitors' ability to advertise. They were told the survival of the company took priority. This could play into the federal antitrust investigation trained on the firm. We could find out next week whether the Gap's plan to spin off Old Navy goes forward even without CEO Art Peck at the helm. There will be a company board meeting to discuss it. Gap Incorporated announced Peck's departure. MKM Partners says Gap pulling in its profit projections for the year triggered the change. On Wall Street, investors are looking for a rest after records. Stock futures are flat. S&P futures down 3, NASDAQ futures 12, Dow futures up 2. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset Management. It's another Friday afternoon, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Just because you travel doesn't mean you can't keep your routine. The more obstacles travel puts between us and our well-being, the more we strive to work well. At Westin Hotels and Resorts, we're focused on empowering your well-being. With Westin Meetings, you work and feel your best with nutritious snacks and nourishing smoothies that give you the energy you need to power through any meeting. Don't leave your well-being behind. We give you the choice to get up or to rise. Search Westin online to find out more. Westin, let's rise.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
This is someone making an online booking at Ford.co.uk using the words Ford20 so they can service their Ford for £20 less. And this is someone who didn't get their Ford serviced. You see, at Ford, we use Ford genuine parts and Ford trained technicians. Plus, if you quote Ford20 when you book with us online,